All right, we're live. Let's see. Hopefully, Rumble is kicking in any time now.
Hello, Rumble.
Hello, Rumble. I want to make sure that's working. Yeah, I keep spinning the same intro, so I'm trying to make sure it's supposed to be feeding to it. 5 are watching now. Oh, there we go. Okay, we're live on Rumble.
Hello, Rumble. Hello, Rumble.
We are here. I've got locals open, and before the invasion of the barns, which means everything's going to go sideways, I will try to pull super chats, Rumble rants, locals questions as best I can. But when these two get going, it's difficult for me to keep up. So please be patient. I will try to get questions, comments, etc. in there, and I wanted to get that out ahead of time.
I just want to point something out. Rumble was a song by Link Ray, instrumental on guitar, for those in the chat.
I think I vaguely remember that.
1950s Link Ray, Rumble. Look it up, YouTube.
Yeah, I think I vaguely remember that. It was one of,
yeah.
It was like one of the surfing songs. There was no words, right?
Right. It wasn't a surfing song. It was really dark. And I think Tarantino has probably used it in some sort of instrumental, Link Ray version. But when I hear Rumble, I think of Link Ray. I can't. And he dressed in black, and I think later might have played with the Stray Cats when they first came out, Eric. I don't know if you remember the Stray Cats, but they also.
Yes, Ray. This is live.
Ray's not. Ray. That's the date Ray passed away. That's
yes.
a dark day in American history. Yeah, I always get these crime updates on my phone, in the middle of the show and all day long.
Oh, dude, we have a Ring doorbell, and every time it goes off now, they're like gunshots in the neighborhood.
Oh yeah,
and we're like, this app is going to cause us so much stress. We're going to have to get, psychological conditioning to just live by our house.
Man with gun in Hollywood, stay indoors.
There we go.
Responding, man with gun. Well, it's Friday, so people got to get paid, and some people didn't get paid, so they're going to get paid some other way.
Okay, great. Hey, I've already got a question that came into locals. People are asking about Jefferson Morley because he's on the radar a lot right now.
Right.
Do you want to go into that at all, or?
He's been around for years. Came from the Washington Post. Might be a spook. Might not be a spook. I've never really figured it out. But his bona fides are from the Washington Post, and he wrote a book called Our Man in Mexico City a number of years ago about Win Scott, and a little bit about Philip Atlee Phillips down there, David Atlee Phillips. But in the book, he goes into great detail and certainty of Oswald running around Mexico City, going to parties, hanging out with people, staying in hotels, and it set up a lot of red flags for me and people like Phil Nelson and Rob Morrow and other researchers about Morley. Morley is obsessed with a guy named George Joanides, and rightfully so. I mean, George Joanides was the Miami Beach station chief for the CIA for many years, and was involved in running the Cubans in the Bay of Pigs operation out of Miami. Joanides was later assigned to the House Assassination Committee as a liaison to the CIA during the investigation, and it turned out later that they finally realized that Joanides was designed to lead them astray. Like, these idiots couldn't figure that out, that this former CIA guy who did not tell them, I guess, what his background was. That being said, Morley believes that he had a press conference the other day where he revealed nothing, other than he believes that the remaining documents that Biden may or may not release December 15th contain information in his wet dream about Joanides, who is his great white whale that he's been stalking. That's his thing, is Joanides. Now, Joanides is a legitimate topic. Now, Morley has somehow gotten his way into the Mary Farrell Foundation, which is a little scary because the Mary Farrell Foundation has been apolitical since the time it was set up. This is the type of crap that happens with the deep state. And I'm not saying Morley is or isn't deep state. I'm just saying he used to work for an organization called the Washington Post. And I don't know any other researchers in this community that I know who ever worked for the Washington Post. I know people work for alternative weeklies, like I did with the Village Voice and other, countercultural productions, but he worked for the Washington Post. So let that be my final word on Jefferson.
You mean where democracy dies in their print?
Yeah. Democracy dies. Democracy dies at dawn. That should be their logo on the top of the page.
Oh God, yeah. Every time you open it and read it, you go, "Oh, a little more democracy just died."
Right. So, anyway, we'll see. I said to Phil Nelson the other day, he does not speak highly of Morley, and either does Rob Morrow, and either does some other people, but they know better than me because they're in the trenches 24/7. I'm kind of on the fringe, but I've talked to him. He's got a certain point of view, and Bobby Kennedy reprinted the Newsweek article that came out about Joanides and this storyline the other day. And I had to point out to Bobby Kennedy, the Newsweek article couldn't even get the story straight that Joanides was CIA. They wrote that he was a former FBI agent. And it's a short article. I mean, it's literally like, 700 words. They intentionally wrote, probably out of reflex, that he was not CIA.
Wow. Look at this, back into the left. Thank you so much.
Greatest handle of all time.
And a hell of a contribution. So thank you. People are asking, and I'm sure we'll get into it with the Barnes whenever he gets here too, our thoughts about Twitter files, which I think is the biggest story of the past decade.
It's WikiLeaks and Watergate combined. It's water leaks. Don't try to use that. I just made that up. That's mine. Knock yourselves out. No, it's as big as Watergate and as big, potentially as big as Watergate, and potentially as big as WikiLeaks. So yeah, I mean, more is to be revealed. I mean, now that Barry Weiss is involved and other legitimate former mainstream journalists like Matt Taibbi, it's interesting what's going on with the people who are doing this.
Also, I don't know if you've seen going around today, Eliza Blue, and her beat is on trafficking, if you will. I can't use the term because YouTube, but this could be bigger than He Who Did Not Kill Himself.
Oh my. Yeah, I think that I don't have any information about this other than it looks like many of us were targeted, Eric, for this Twitter operation, right? Some of us may have been shadow banned and not knowing it.
Pasha wants to say not Wikigate.
Now you go with Wikigate, Pasha. I'm going to stick with WaterLeaks. I think just my own.
I prefer that too because I'm tired of Gate on everything.
Yeah, no, Gate's
been
lazy. Gate's been abused.
Black
Hebrew lights. I think he means Hebrewites or something.
Oh, okay. Hebrew Israelites, maybe.
Yeah, Israelites. Yeah. I don't know what to tell you about them. They're nuts. Hey, look, Barnes is going with the same thing I got going on. Okay. And now we got it going on here. This is the look for today, Barnes.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. You got the America's Untold Stories hat. I got the Duran
right.
hat.
Okay.
Nice.
This is how we roll. Yeah, I got my another Democrat for Nixon pin, and all the way with LBJ pin from my rare political pin collection, Robert.
Yeah, I got the Caro book behind me. How do you pronounce his name? Is it Caro or Caro?
Caro.
Caro.
Yeah, Caro.
Yeah,
like
Caro.
the syrup, I think.
Yeah, he's from the Bronx. He's actually a Jewish fellow from the Bronx.
Well, no wonder, because he wrote that damn long ass book on
Robert Moses.
Moses, yeah. Okay, so that makes sense.
which as I told you, when Oliver Stone and I went to HBO, Oliver immediately got into a screaming match with the president of HBO about the Robert Moses project that I didn't even know about, that they turned down 5 years before, that he still had not let go of. And I said, Oliver, calm down. We just got here. And he's yelling at the guy about this Robert Moses project he had with HBO based on Caro's book.
Interesting. I mean, ultimately, Ed Norton got his made, The Motherless Brooklyn. That's even though it's eclectic detective story, it's the backstory is basically Robert Moses, isn't it?
Right. Now, Robert Moses, as you know, created racist overpasses, Bob.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's where Booty Gay was right when he said that the parts of American federal infrastructure was racist. People are like, what in the world are you talking about? Well, actually, in New York, that's exactly what Moses did.
Those buses won't fit under the trestles.
Exactly. They did it. It was like when I was about to go to LSU law school, and when I got down there, I found out that basically they cut off their bus service at like 6 or 6:30. And basically
all different things that used to happen back then.
Yeah, and Baton Rouge, basically they didn't want the black section of Baton Rouge coming over to the white section of Baton Rouge unless it was work hours.
Well, let me put it this way. As soon as they extended the line, the subway line from South Central to Santa Monica, the crime rate in Santa Monica has gone through the roof. As these people had predicted and begged and fought and lobbied, not anymore. Now there's crime going through the roof in Santa Monica, my friend.
Well, it's similar to Malibu. Don't they cut off the bus route like at 7 p.m.?
Yeah, but that's a guy on a bus. I mean, the train now goes to the beach in Santa Monica. You'd have to take multiple buses to commit crime in Malibu. But I'll tell you this, when the Black Lives Matter protest happened, they bused them on rented buses to Malibu to protest at Cross Creek mall there. Yeah.
Yep.
So, if you could get there, but you got to work at it.
Cool.
Well, yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead, Barnes.
Oh, I was gonna, I did want to, there's a certain part of the beach that's public. You're public access, and of course, all the Malibu people always go crazy.
Oh yeah,
about commoners coming up there.
Yep.
And I just wanted, what I was going to do is figure out exactly where the public section was, and like sit across from like Geffen's house or one of those people's house right in the backyard of the beach, and just read on the public section so they couldn't do anything about it.
There's a narrow walkway that goes across from this motel strip, which they fought to the death over this little entranceway a couple of years ago. There's little entranceways,
yes,
between people's houses,
and they try not to let people know about them because
but they camouflage them. Yeah,
yes,
they literally put up camouflage, bro, so you can't see the little narrow paths that they were legally obligated to put in.
I talked about the time I got locked out of Malibu, right or no?
The whole town.
No, what happened was the house, the head of the firm that I worked with at the time owned the house. And so I stayed there. He would come in, once every couple of months. He left. I was down somewhere and he locked up, and I didn't bring my key with me. Almost never did. So I get back to Malibu and everything's locked. You can't, the only way to get in is to get in by going the beach route. But to get down to because of those little stops, I had to walk like a mile down to get up. Problem was about halfway up, I hit high tide, and I was in my suit. And there are these people like sitting upstairs at this classic Malibu. So every couple of blocks, I'd be able to walk a little bit, and then I get hammered with the water. I get soaked. And then walk
it's designed that way for a reason, Robert.
Yes, that's exactly why. And all these people sitting on their little balconies were just laughing. Look at the guy in the suit getting drenched.
Yeah, it's kind of their Middle Ages moat that they've created, right? To keep out the riffraff, Robert. So
that's one of my favorite lines from Big Lebowski. Get out of my town, deadbeat. Get out of Malibu, Lebowski.
Right. But it's also, stuff like they now came up with the idea that sharks are racist the other day because some woman did a study who became a shark expert and got a degree, some sort of scientific degree in the study of sharks. But she said she grew up watching Shark Week for 10 years, and there was never a person of color, and an inordinate amount of people on the show were named Mike. This was a side part of her study. It was a bunch of white guys named Mike who had mastered or cornered the Shark Week market, Robert.
That was actually one of Joe Francis's first starts, was actually not Girls Gone Wild, but was Shark Attacks.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, but what he interned at some place and saw that this was really popular, but nobody would put it on the air. And so he found that's another story how he found people to put it on the air.
Right.
But that his first thing was shark stuff, and then it was Girls Gone Wild.
Well, it's a natural move. I mean, you go from
Yeah.
Shark Week to Girls Gone Wild. I mean, anybody could see that, you know.
You know, he did. I did learn interesting things about the current owners of Musso and Frank's. But
yeah, you told me that off air one time.
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
You know,
fascinating. I love Musso and Frank's. I haven't been there like 4 or 5 years. I assume it's still there though, right?
Oh yeah, it's still there. It's like a museum. I mean, really, normal people don't go there.
Old whiskey sad, but it still has the old whiskey sours.
Yeah,
I guess is Gore Vidal finally dead? Because he used to. I saw him. Gore Vidal there once.
Yeah, a few years ago.
No. Gore Vidal's been dead for a while. Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, there are places in this town that are like tourist museums. Like regular people don't go to Musso and Frank's. You know what I mean? It's like I was there like, I don't know, 20 years ago, but I'm saying people don't go to those places. But they're well.
In, the Tarantino film, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Right. Yeah.
All
because
those conversations.
Look at the period they're depicting. Look at the period.
1960s.
Right.
Sort of the peak. It's old school.
Peak.
It's like something that almost. Well, I guess the Pacific Dining Car downtown is gone.
Yeah, didn't make it.
That's terrible. I mean, I love that. That was an old school place. You know, Denzel Washington. You know, get the baseball steak from that great cop movie. I used to eat there. They also made whiskey sours from scratch. Right. Open 24/7 because of the hospital around the corner. There's almost no.
Didn't survive.
I mean, what are there like 4 old school places that are more than 20 years old in LA? I mean, it's a place where old school goes to die.
Yeah. There's some weird places that did survive that maybe shouldn't have survived.
The pink, what's the? Well, there's Roscoe's.
Roscoe's survived. Roscoe's did survive.
Chicken and waffles.
Pink's survived. The hot dog.
Pink's. That's what I'm thinking of. Pink's.
Worst hot dog I've ever had in my life. It's on La Brea. You know, because I grew up with Nathan's and Coney Island.
I was gonna say, if you grew up around
Coney Island. I remember coming out here going, why are these people around the block 24/7? They go, dude, that's Pink's. So I go and try it one day, and I just spit the thing out onto the street on La Brea. I go, what the hell is this? You know, and yet they continue.
It's kind of like In-N-Out Burger. You know, like In-N-Out Burger has this big reputation. You get out there, it's like, oh, it's okay, but it's not like
I agree.
burger.
Completely agree. You want the best burger in LA? Fat Burger. Everybody knows it. Fat Burger.
My introduction In-N-Out Burger was from the movie Fletch. Where he says, hey, what about let's go on a date. What about the In-N-Out burger? And she says no, and he goes, well, what about the end part?
Yes. Well, we were talking the other day about Steely Dan going to Bard College and how they were busted by G. Gordon Liddy, but the drummer in their previous band at the college was Chevy Chase, who would later be in your favorite movie, Fletch.
Liddy is like a crazy character. You speaking of like a grace-based character. Everything connected to this Victor Bout thing is wild. Not only Victor Bout, because he's the Merchant of Death, the Lord. He was the guy Nicolas Cage based his character on, Lord of War. Yeah. Great end when he says, sooner or later, I'll be let out because your guys are going to need me. The other part is this Paul Whelan guy who's got one of the weirdest backstories of anybody.
Oh, he's a spook. You know, I mean.
He does, but he's like Canadian passport, British, because he was born in Ottawa, to British citizens of Irish descent, and then moved to the U.S. He has 4 passports.
That's perfect, Robert.
Yeah, exactly. And then he makes up all kinds of crazy stories. It reminded me of not like Liddy, but around like a lot of people around Liddy, like a Frank Sturgis type, right? Where he's got he claimed to have an MBA. He never even graduated college. He claimed to work for a bunch of police departments that are like, we have no record of him working for us. And yet he keeps getting these great security gigs. I mean, that's what screams spookish. It's like, how is he getting international business connections to FSB people? I mean, how does he get that unless he is a spook? And his excuse was that.
Same thing with the old guys around RFK. You know, I mean, Thane Eugene Caesar got jobs at Skunk Works in Burbank around the U-2 spy plane. I mean, how do you get a job like that? Well, he's a plumber. You go, what? Yeah, he fixes the toilets. I'm going, you sure he does? Yeah, that's a great cover.
How did that CIA file come out finally about Oswald? Because I mean,
it didn't come out. That's what we were just talking about before the show. Morley, who I think is spook adjacent, used to be Washington Post, had a press conference saying that he believes that in this tranche of Biden documents is stuff linking Oswald to the CIA. He has no clue what's in there. He doesn't know what's in there. I mean, it could be anything that's in there, Robert.
Okay.
He had because that's his wishful Christmas thinking, you know, that Biden's going to release something about the guy he's been pursuing, who is George Joanides, who was the station chief in Miami who was CIA running Cubans during the Bay of Pigs. That's the guy he's been after for years.
The backstory on Whelan may be that Whelan supported Trump, and that's why Biden has no interest.
I heard that. Yeah, but Putin said today the deals are not done. That he's in negotiations with them on other.
Yeah, in fact, I mean, their offer has been that they're willing to send Whelan back. They just want 1 for 1. They're not going to give 2
Right,
for 1.
but there's other trades one-on-one.
Oh, absolutely, because there's several people that got arrested under Russiagate that they think are BS charges, the Russians.
Right. Now, Putin demanded 2 draft choices, which Biden buckled on. He wouldn't give up the draft choices, or a lower draft choice. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing about the Lord of War guy is the charges that we set him up on were really bogus. In other words, that was an entrapment operation that we didn't get him on a legit. He is a legit arms runner, no doubt about it. He is Nicolas Cage's character. But the reality is he used to work for us. And what his crime was, when Putin decided to break from the West, he worked exclusively for Putin or Putin allies. And that's what got the U.S. mad, and they set him up in a bogus entrapment plan.
Anytime I see a 60 Minutes episode that says this is the most dangerous man in the world, and there's 600 episodes that say that about different people, I kind of just lower my head and just get.
The guy's really kind of nonchalant. He's kind of like low-key fun. I mean, that's what even when he was convicted, the judge said, look, this crime wouldn't have happened but for the U.S. creating it. So I'm going to give him the lowest possible sentence, but the lowest possible sentence is 25 years.
Right.
But he was like, your empire will die before I do. So I'll be out of here sometime soon.
Well, I can tell you this much. This is the first time a trade in the WNBA ever made news.
Yeah, exactly.
Whoever said that was the mic drop of the day.
Yeah. There's abuse in it. Now people do look at her and wonder, is gender looks kind of interesting.
Well, she can dunk. Let me just put it that way.
Well, everybody said that she does look like Pete Davidson.
Right. I can't dunk. She can dunk, and that's speaks for itself.
Well, maybe the Lord of War can help get some of those Afghani weapons back.
Wouldn't it be great if we make up with Russia and we start to play basketball and she's on the team against the Russians? Yeah, she's on our team and she plays against the Russian women's team. I'd pay to see that.
Yes,
definitely. And we got some money coming in from locals. Somebody sent in, hello, gents. Love these standalone shows like Gordon Liddy.
That was great.
Liddy. Yeah.
Sorry.
Did you see that one, Robert?
Oh yeah. Aren't there like 70,000 views or something?
No.
That
Mac Wallace.
Oh, Mac Wallace.
I watched both of them. But what led to Mac? Was that because you guys were at the Kennedy conference? You think, or just
no? Mac Wallace was always on the list.
But I mean, why this massive viewership?
Oh, that we don't know.
He's popular.
He's popular, especially in the West. People know him out here.
He and David Ferry's another popular one with the eyebrows.
Right. Yeah.
But Mac Wallace is not above, but below the radar. I'm surprised people were even aware of who he was. I mean, I
didn't know about Liddy's whole history as a part-time cop prosecutor guy. That was crazy.
That's how I know Liddy going to Bard, because I knew him as assistant DA of Dutchess County, Robert. That's the only Liddy I knew. Busted those stories I said where he got locked in the trunk of the car. Those buffoonery stories of him trying to bust Bard was how I grew up with the stories. I don't know the other Liddies. I just know the DA stories of Liddy in Dutchess County. And then running for office, obviously trying to become a congressman against a Hamilton Fish of the great Fish family of New York, one of the oldest families in New York, Robert, that had Albert Fish, the Moon Maniac, as a cousin, the serial killer.
Oh, yeah.
That's right.
That is wild. I mean, everything about that is wild. And then his time in prison was wild.
Who, Liddy, you're talking about?
That I always feared. That was my great defense against getting them locking me up. I'll give free legal advice to all the inmates.
Right. Well, he's not the only one to ever do that, but when he developed a Galen-like organization that was an intelligence unit,
he weaponized it.
That's a movie by itself, because he wiretapped the warden and turns it against the warden and then sues the warden, and then they keep transferring him from prison to prison, Robert.
I'm sure that's where Stephen King got Shawshank. I'm sure that he got it from that.
That wouldn't surprise me. Do you hear Rogan's rant that Stephen King should go back on drugs? He wrote better when he was high.
That's funny.
That's the truth.
That's funny.
I mean, Stephen King has sucked since the 80s.
Okay, yeah, I've only watched some of the movies. I've never read any of his stuff.
I read him a long time ago, and then he wrote this book. I think it was a Tommy Knockers, which is one of the worst piles of trash I've ever read. He spent more pages talking about a woman's cycle in that book than anything I've ever heard. Yeah, it's like everything about it, because it was causing disturbances within her in the cycle. And I think he was at like full tilt cocaine, about to, lose his mind, go straight, whatever. But that book sucked.
Well, he
so
wrote one
hard.
called November 22nd about the Kennedy assassination. That's about 700 pages long, about a time traveling Oswald. And you just read this and you go, oh, dear God. I can't do this anymore. You know what I mean?
Well, that's like 2 decades past his prime.
Right. I mean, the time traveling Oswald, I don't buy into. Yeah.
So, Eric, how was the trip to Dallas? Was that your first JFK convention?
Oh, yeah. No, the first time I got to meet Mark.
Was it to meet up to expectations, different than expectations?
It was cool seeing Mark, and I liked Dealey Plaza. As far as the conference itself, I maybe got 10 minutes in a session.
Yeah, we didn't have that much time to sit there like conference members, Robert, because we were interviewing everybody out in the hall, so we didn't really. Plus, there were screenings of movies I've already seen, like Max Good's movie on Ruth Payne. He was there with the movie, and then Destiny Betrayed. DiEugenio was there with that movie. So it would be a waste of time for us to just sit there in those screenings.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? Because they were hours long. So we took the opportunity to interview the top people. But we were both surprised how many people followed us, right, Eric?
Yeah, I mean, well, especially you. I didn't catch as many, but it was cool because we jumped over to another conference and interviewed Phil Nelson over there. And that was awesome.
Phil Nelson wrote the book, LBJ Mastermind of the JFK assassination, which I highly recommend. It's the definitive book on LBJ. It's kind of like the anti-Caro, right? The Caro, it's as efficient, it's as erudite as Caro.
True.
But it's got more dirt and darkness than Caro cares to visit. Caro,
it's like you take the Roger Stone book and flesh it out.
Have they portrayed that cinematically about LBJ really in any film?
No, the closest they ever came was a obscure actor named Kevin Spacey in House of Cards, because the books are on his desk and he alludes to this LBJ-esque character that he's portraying. And the books are really his guide in the series, according to the original writer.
Because Bill Clinton was an admirer, so that would also fit. Well, I mean, whenever I saw the House of Cards, I thought this is what DC really thinks of or knows about the Clintons.
The writer was a press liaison, I think, to the Clintons, or he came from the press room out of the White House, so it was kind of like the Oval Office look, at stuff internal in DC. He'd been around for a couple of years, the guy.
Yep, but when they lost Kevin Spacey, that they lost the plot on that.
Oh, Spacey was brilliant in that show.
Dude, he's a genius. I mean, he finally did a voiceover on some project for the first time working, and it was a voiceover. And I said to somebody, I'd love to do a documentary of every single person who was in show business who was banned. The documentary is everyone who was banned, and they just sit before the camera and they tell their story. Whether it's Charlie Rose, Louis C.K., whoever it is, all in one documentary. I think people would be riveted to that. Give them their 5 minutes of explanation, Robert.
Yeah, banned in Hollywood.
Banned in Hollywood, absolutely. And it could be across the aisle. It could be, Garrison Keillor.
Keillor being there.
Who was the black guy that was on late night after Charlie Rose who got Me Too'd? What was it?
Arsenio Hall? No.
No. He was on PBS. PBS late night. After Charlie Rose, he was on, and he got Me Too.
Oh, I think I know you're out in New York, right?
Yeah. He fought it for a while. Remember, he tried to fight it and eventually gave up. But yeah, all of them in one movie. All of them.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Eddie Murphy hasn't really been banned despite his unique habits.
We need David here to be talking about that. Let me see. I mean, if you don't,
accreditation body.
Yeah, it would be nice if Baker lost his license to practice at this point.
yeah. What do you think
Yeah.
about that?
I mean, my view is that anybody talking about going to licensing boards are wasting their time. They will never do anything to anybody on the left. It takes, it took like 3 indictments for California to do anything about Michael Avenatti. It took more than 800 complaints and a bankruptcy filing for them to do anything about Girardi. If you're on the right, they'll be happy to attack you. But if you're on the left, I mean, find the example of corrupt Democratic lawyers that ever get hit by the bar. It's almost never. They have to get convicted or it has to get crazy. So now I think Twitter, Elon Musk has a lawsuit against James Baker, but anybody expecting any legal licensing board to do anything is wasting their time. They will do nothing at all. Nothing at all. They are all political hacks. I mean, you have the Texas licensing board working under the Texas Republican Supreme Court, 7-0 Republicans, conservative Republicans. And who are they going after? They're going after Sidney Powell and the elected attorney general of the state, not based on any client complaint. I mean, this is absurd. But so the licensing boards are all controlled by the left, and people don't, like Will Chamberlain and other people, don't seem to understand this. They are all leftist hacks that control these boards.
You think 14 years was a little steep for Avenatti?
I mean, what's on top of, I think, what, the 4.5? It was the aggregate. It was the aggregate of all the tax fraud, all the client fraud. It was just one thing on top of the next thing on top of the next thing.
I mean, he went down. It was in Orange County with Republican judge. That's what I'm saying. This is the flip of that, and it's concurrent, Robert, the sentencing, right?
I think it's consecutive. I think it's he does that on top of the 4 or whatever it is, or 2 in New York.
But I'm saying 14 seems a little steep for a white collar first time offender hustling some money from clients.
It's the amount of money. The money drives.
Okay, all right.
I mean, in the federal system, you get hit hard based on money.
Okay, all right.
So, like, I mean, your average tax sentence is 5
Well, maybe
years.
he can go to Danbury like Liddy did and become the Liddy of Danbury.
Yeah, we'll see how well he can work his magic inside the prison cells. But it's like Kanye. Like, if he really owes $50 million in tax, like he said, Tim Pool, that's 25 years. That's what he's looking.
Yeah, can you explain that theory? Because I was trying to tell Nate about it, and remembering stuff, I just suck at it.
If you're Kanye and you're in trouble in tax, let's say, according to what he told Tim Pool, is that he's under criminal tax investigation, and that made him nervous, and he even gripped his arm, and that he owed over $50 million in tax, and that they're trying to put him in prison. So it's a weird thing to just volunteer out of the gate, which he did, which suggests it's on the preoccupied his mind. So that's part one. Part two, if you're Kanye and you're figuring out how do I get out of this, you're going to research other prominent cases. The first person you're probably going to research is the Wesley Snipes case. Black male celebrity, Hollywood, who accused of major tax charges, who mostly walked. And if he did, he would come across a lot of headlines that said crazy ain't criminal. And now that was to explain one part. That was not the full defense of the Snipes case. But if you don't dig in, you might think, oh, if I can plead crazy, they won't charge me. I'll get to walk. And I don't care if I lose $250 million or
would you though? Because, I mean, I know it's not criminal, but for example, almost every case of somebody who's gets a sanity defense spends more time in the mental hospital than they would have in prison.
Well, the reason crazy, I mean, that's where he didn't dig deep into it, but the reason is the unique willfulness defense in tax charges. So if you, in good faith, believe you don't have to pay the tax, then that was really the defense. And it was just a lot of the beliefs that the juries were going to hear was going to sound crazy. And so we had to find a way to preempt that. And so we preempted that by saying in the opening statement, if crazy was criminal, half of Hollywood would be in prison. And so the goal was, so when they heard crazy things, they would say, oh, that's just Hollywood. And Snipes played into it, by the way. I mean, as soon as he heard that, he's like, oh, that's great. He's like, he's wearing wild, weird ties.
Wasn't part of his defense black reparations from a black accountant who said you could beat this with reparations?
I mean, there's stuff out there like that. In Snipes' case, it was a classic. Didn't believe the tax laws technically applied to him and the money he received.
Oh, okay. Because there's a separate thing where they believe. Oh, okay, all right.
But he himself didn't. But what it is if you're Kanye, you just read the headlines. Oh, crazy ain't criminal. That's how Snipes got off. Okay, if people think I'm crazy, I won't be prosecuted or won't go to jail.
Right.
And then he could start a whole script of how do I think initially you might be just trying to convince Trump to pardon you when you're butting up to Trump, and now Trump's out. How do you adjust now? I'll plead crazy. So that's my alternative. That's the only smart version I see to what he's doing. Otherwise,
and is that because of the behavior like Alex Jones? And I think everybody said that he's acting completely normal. And then as soon as the cameras go on, he just goes off the rails.
Correct. And that makes me think something is up. And it's possible that he's like when Charlie Sheen lost it. This is now public, so I can discuss it now. But what people didn't realize is all that tiger blood discussion, that was a clue. Charlie lost it because he got an HIV diagnosis. Mm-hmm. That's what had happened. Charlie knows I got it, but that's another story. But Charlie was always nice by me, so I'll always be nice by him and reciprocate. But that's why, he was giving off the clue as to why he had kind of lost it. The tiger blood was okay. There's some blood reference. Well, what do we know about Charlie Sheen's lifestyle? Might we draw an inference? It's just really odd to go on Tim Pool and volunteer. I owe a bunch of money in tax.
And disappear and then just walk out.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's why I thought he's trying to find a way. Imagine, let's say that is the plot. Let's say that's the script. And let's say he's getting more and more annoyed because people take him seriously when he's trying to convince them he's crazy. Mm-hmm. That'd be like its own film, right?
But also he may not have any more narrative to express.
Yeah, well, that's where he's like, okay,
I run out of script. I got to get out of here.
Exactly, and then nobody's buying it. They don't understand. Please tell me I'm crazy. Please have the world say I'm crazy. Everybody's taking me seriously. This is not working right.
Well, he's not that talented. That was the one thing I thought was funny. Is because he would start to go down a subject line and he'd say, "Nick, can you take over?"
Right. No, because he may have run out of script. I mean,
he went out
if he took a candle and started burning his hand, Robert, like Liddy, or eat a dead rat like Liddy did, I think you might have something.
Well, especially, I just don't buy that Kanye doesn't see a guy like Fuentes for exactly who he is. It took Jones a little while to fully pick up on it. But that he's a race grifter. He's an old school race grifter. And you've got him on all sides. Al Sharpton was a famous race grifter for most of his career and tenure. Just, and tapping into Black-Jewish conflict goes back to urban politics and goes to the music industry.
The head of the ADL hangs out with Al Sharpton
all the time. So you have this sort of old dynamic present. There's no way I just don't see Kanye as that unsophisticated that he doesn't know exactly who Milo is. He doesn't know exactly who Fuentes is, and that he is using them to project this sort of image of lunacy in the hopes that it will get him out of criminal tax charges. And people are like, well, would he risk losing money? Compare that to 25 years in federal prison. He'd spend every penny he has to avoid 25 years.
Well, I don't think blaming Jewish accountants is going to work for him in court.
Oh, but he'll be his combination though.
Right.
I didn't pay the tax because it was all going to go to the Jews so they could kill the blacks.
Right.
But maybe that's the second level plot.
Yeah.
I don't know if there is a real second level plot yet. I think he just had a one level plot. But if he's got to develop one,
if you need a screenwriter, I'm available until January 20th when I have another project. So if you need somebody to spec this out, call me.
Exactly.
There you go.
But yeah, that stuff, that whole thing.
He needs his own doctor. He needs like a Dr. Jolly West to come in there.
Very specific choice there.
Yeah, he needs like a Dr. Jolly West, a deep state doctor to really examine him closely, Rob.
Well, he had a deep state Canadian handle.
Yeah, that's why I'm mentioning Jolly West. Yeah.
The other thing with all of that, I lost my train of thought.
In the meantime, let me show you this book I just got, which is from the PayPal book fund from the people there. And it's a rare book that I didn't even know existed called Government by Gunplay. And it's a series of articles. This is from the 70s that are written by various authors about conspiracy, including how the Zapruder film totally disproves the Warren Commission. This is an older book, obviously. The hard evidence that Lee Harvey Oswald was a U.S. government agent, the Dallas connection with Vietnam, the framing of the man accused of shooting Martin Luther King, the strange history of the CIA, Richard Nixon's organization with relationship with organized crime, and the vast power struggle between the Yankees and the Cowboys for control of the USA. Now, the reason I mention this is this book, which was rare, which I just got my hands on, has an introduction by Philip A.G. Robert, the author of Inside the Company, but it's edited by a guy you may have heard of named Sidney Blumenthal.
Oh, wow.
Sidney Blumenthal,
That's
my
funny.
friends, that we mentioned the other day, Robert, that you talked about on the show.
Well, it's another one of those sort of mid-tier operators. Now, we're going to the convention. Did you run into many people that were like obsessed with the idea that JFK Jr. was still alive or anything like that?
No.
No. You don't really get that. You get guys who are either complete novices coming for the first time, or people who are set in this one thing like Nixon killed them. I got to get to the story. And they have their one crazy, it was Frank Sturgis, bro. Why don't you look into Frank Sturgis? He did it. Or James Files. You got those guys. But
just read our comment section.
Just read our comment section. You'll see who goes there. You know what I mean?
Because like QAnon targeted initially, the Q movement targeted people who believed JFK Jr. was still alive. And Kennedy assassination people, like that was the group they targeted, but only a specific subset of those people.
Well, any ability to smear the JFK conspiracy research community, and QAnon obviously is a deep state operation, any attempt to smear the Zapruder film being re-edited and recut, any attempt to deflect from the CIA's involvement is the ongoing struggle by the deep state. So that makes sense, Robert, what you're discussing.
Yeah.
Like we said, the phrase conspiracy theorist came out from the JFK research after Mark Lane. They used that to smear Mark Lane with Rush to Judgment.
That whole German plot seems, completely entrapment oriented to me. I mean, now it doesn't surprise me that there's some crazy neo-fascist running around Germany who want to put princes and kings back into power. But it seems like they trapped him into talking up nonsense.
Wait. Who are you talking about specifically?
Oh, have you heard about the recent German indictment?
No, I haven't. That's why I'm
asking. Okay. Yeah, they died like 25 people, including some semi-high-ranking people as part of a conspiracy, QAnon connected conspiracy to overthrow the German government and put a prince into power.
Oh, come on. This sounds like this is something out of Stephen King.
Ooh. Hey, guys, in locals, looks like there's going to be some Twitter files relating to January 6th.
Oh,
that'll be nice. That'll be fun.
Bravo, the gift that keeps on
Trump
giving.
I'll give Musk credit for all that. It's like
you got to give him up. You got to give him credit, Robert. I mean, he doesn't.
Absolutely.
This I said the other day to Eric. There's three people who didn't need to do what they did in American politics in the last 50 years. Ronald Reagan did not need to do what he did running for president. Donald Trump did not need to do what he did, and Elon Musk did not need to do what he did. Right?
Yeah, I agree.
When you think about those three men who just said, "Fuck it, I've had enough. I got to do something," and we all three are the same kind of mentality, and all three were members of the other party and switched parties.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. Now tell me about Arizona with Sinema. What's going on there, Bob?
She's just trying to lock in the McCain Goldwater voter.
Okay. I was thinking she was trying to be a Manchin or something.
Yeah, it's
a good time to do it.
She knows in Arizona the best way to sustain your voting power is to be perceived as an irascible independent.
Right.
Even if you're not necessarily, just be perceived as it. And so that's why she's announcing it on the eve of 2024, hoping to dissuade Democrats from putting anybody up. And that she'll get that older Goldwater McCain type voter who's independent. There's Arizona voters that like that perceived independence. I don't think McCain was. McCain was a hack, but he successfully marketed himself as one.
Right.
And that's what she's looking for.
Don't forget the famous LBJ line about Goldwater, his predecessor. In your guts, you know he's nuts.
Yeah, I mean that's good campaign. You want to see campaign? 1964. The little girl counting the thing.
Come on! I mean, they put a lot of money into that ad. That
absolutely. And then this is what Garrett Goldwater will do to the East Coast.
Well, I was just explaining to Eric. Yeah, if you look over my right shoulder, you see the German version of the movie 7 Days in May. The movie poster for that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That's it. You see 7 Tage im Mai. That's the German movie poster, but 7 Days in May was directed by an obscure director named John Frankenheimer and written by a guy named Rod Serling.
Wow.
Yeah, just a little trivia there for you.
I'm
and
going to jump
is
in this.
ostensibly the story of General Walker. That's who Burt Lancaster is playing in this movie. And as JFK famously said when he let him use the White House, he went to Hyannisport. He went for vacation. He let them use the White House, and it had never been done before by a president. And he said to Powers or the other aide that if I have another Bay of Pigs, this could happen to me. About the movie, you know what I mean? This could actually happen. And he had read the novel when it came out, the Fletcher Neville novel, and said that about before there was a movie that this could happen to me. It was very truthfully depicted in the book. Just a little trivia there.
All right, I got some Rumble rants I'm going to run through really quickly and catch up. Krabby T. Girth. What do we think about the latest gun control release, the Merchant of Death? We kind of went into that already. Seymour SR. Do we think the Griner trade is worse than the Vikings Cowboy Herschel Walker trade?
Interesting.
Not bad.
Right.
Tina Gwen, two-tier justice system. Thoughts on Trump indictment?
Well, we'll see. We'll see if they pull the trigger on it. I mean,
I think they're pulling the trigger. Robert doesn't. You're starting to lean now, Robert. Because
they just keep marching.
I've gone trigger all the way. So it's just a question of timing. They gotta have that perp walk, Robert.
Exactly. Yeah, arrested, have the handcuffs.
It has to be done, bro, for Rob Reiner's mental health.
But that is getting past. They're crossing a lot of Rubicons.
I know, but they've already crossed a lot of them.
Yeah, well, the Russians were making fun of us on Russian TV. They're like, "Why do we get this? One of our great arms runners back, and for a WNBA player instead of the." Well, it's because he goes, the problem with the Paul Whelan, here's a Marine, here's a veteran, here's a hero, here's a spy, and but he's white, he's male, he's heterosexual. No way Americans will ask for him back. It's like that is
how long was she there? 4 months?
Not long. I mean,
8 months.
Whelan's
I think it's
been
8
there
months.
several years.
8 months? Okay. Yeah. I mean, when she started to order food from Trader Joe's, I mean, that was outrageous.
Krabby T. Girth. Just a reminder, Mark, it would be good if you guys did a show about Pine Ridge and Leonard Peltier. Also some book money.
Leonard Peltier, the American Indian Movement name. I knew an FBI guy that was up there. Man, he told me some stories. Those old school Hoover guys.
Peltier is not clean, by the way, Robert.
Oh, not at all.
I know.
But
these people who keep asking about Leonard Peltier are not going to be happy about the show. So
neither were the feds. Man,
no, both sides have dirt on their
they were. Yeah. That was just old school wars. What that was.
Yeah, but it was internal among the Indians first.
Oh yes. You
know that. I mean, it was an Indian war, right?
Of course.
It was the Apaches and the Comanches, and then the feds came in. The whole thing blew up.
Yep.
What is happening with Pelosi? Bread wants to know.
Other than Paul Pelosi, I mean, we'll see what happens with those charges. They got what they wanted out of it, and they'll probably coerce a plea deal out of the guy, and then we'll never hear anything about it again.
We'll never even hear about the guy.
Cashing out. She's cashing out is what she's doing.
Yeah.
And Fleet Lord Atvar wants a Freeform Friday 6-hour Christmas special with Barnes and Mark.
Well, you got to get Viva for that because we need some comic relief from Viva.
Oh, no kidding.
You got to bring in Viva's kids, the dog. You need extra people for that length.
Yeah,
trying to get him to have the little one say Viva Barnes Law at .locals.com.
Oh yeah, you should.
Yeah.
Right. We got Hunley who says it's just as good.
Yeah, I have the cuteness quotient of Ethan.
Hunley brings out his cat that weighs 400 pounds. Well, you got to see when he brings.
You know what I said? I can't pick him up now.
I know. This cat must weigh 120.
No, literally can't pick him up. I feel terrible because he's like coming around, and I'm like. It's like, no, I still love you, buddy. I just literally cannot.
We have a cult here around this mountain lion that lives in Griffith Park named P22, right? So it's a cult because these are atheist. I finally figured this out. There's billboards around. They built this bridge so the mountain lions can go across. They can't get rid of the homeless, but they spent $2 billion on a bridge over the 101 to make it look like a natural bridge. So the mountain lions can go back and forth and pick up other mountain lions and have sex with them in their mountain lion lair. So they were getting hit by cars every once in a while. So they're going to build this bridge. And now it finally dawned on me that what these people are they worship animals, like animists, Robert. And it never hit me.
Yeah, that's a South Park episode, remember?
Yeah,
Where
yeah.
they combine like the voting rights with the animal rights issue, and they're like, "Oh
Yes,
no,
they worship animals.
you actually love animals. You don't just love
Right,
animals; you
right.
love animals."
Love animals. So now they've decided yesterday in the news here locally. By the way, they have a city councilman here who's going to jail, and they gave him back his entire salary. They all voted yesterday on the city council to give him his money while he's appealing his conviction for the USC scandal. Mark Ridley Thomas. Of course, his salary was suspended because he was indicted. And now they all voted to give it back to him, $375,000 a year, so he could live large. And now Kamala Harris is flying here tomorrow to swear in the new mayor, the current Marxist, former Black Panther.
Scientology adjacent.
Scientologist, right?
Scientologist. So the reason I'm telling you this story is they cleaned out all the homeless around the spot where they're doing the swearing in and put them in a luxury hotel in downtown LA only for a couple of a week or so because the hotel's being demolished soon. So they're going to have to take them out. But anyway, getting back to the animals for 1 second, P22, who has a cult status here as a 120-pound mountain lion, is being followed.
Here's a suggestion, Mark.
Maybe more mountain lions will ease up the homeless problem. Right. If you combine the two things, you got some answers. We had a guy here. They brought a guy in. This is 15 years ago from Australia who was like Crocodile Dundee. And they hired him to find the mountain lion. So he goes up into Griffith Park. He finds a mountain lion, comes back and says, "Oh, yeah, you have a mountain lion up there, mate." And they go, "Okay, did you catch it?" He goes, "Oh, no, I'm just a tracker. I'm not a catcher." And he takes his $120,000 fee and he goes back to Sydney, Australia. And he says, "Thanks a lot, boys." And he goes home. So he goes, "I'm not a catcher. I'm a tracker." So they had a collar around him. And now there was a period 3 years ago in episode 19 of the reality show of P22 where he started to eat rodents. And you go, well, who cares what P22 eats? Well, the rodents had eaten rat poison, so P22's fur started to fall out because he was eating poisoned rodents that had eaten the rodent poison. So you go, oh, well, what's your solution to that? Okay, what's the solution? Get rid of the rat poison to increase the rat population. So P20, I swear to God, Robert, I swear to God. So P22 would not eat a poison rodent. That was the move by the city council, get rid of rat poison. So now they, out of the blue, for no reason, they want to capture P22 again just to give him a full medical checkup.
No, it's like when these people up in the hills lose their little dogs and they put those little signs up, say, "Where's my little dog?"
Oh, yeah.
It's the coyote's already taken it. Your little dog is gone.
Or
Your little dog. Yeah, exactly. Or P22. Your little dog was dinner. You're wasting your time looking for little.
Their worship of animals is not like you said. It's not like I love poodles. Yeah. They worship them in a religious animist manner. You know what I mean? They're nature worshipers. They're atheists in terms of organized religion, but the animal culture and that's used to be the worship of Disney cartoon characters, but now Disney's gone off the rails. So they don't do that.
Yeah, they need to find trans animals and get back on track.
Well, we call them tranimals, Eric. Tranimals.
Oh, okay. I'm catching up.
Don't use that. I just made that up. That's mine.
What do you think about Bob Iger? There's talk about him trying to run for president.
He talked about running for president early on. The talk was him back in the day running for president, and the other guy ran it off the rails. But all of the PC stuff started with Bob Iger. He's full of crap. Yes. The other guy just wasn't as smooth as Iger in pulling it off with his.
Yeah, he brought in Kathleen Kennedy, and from what I understand, he was telling the other guy, "Do this, do this, do this."
Right. The other guy was his underling before Bob Iger left to explore running for president or whatever Bob Iger did. But they begged Bob Iger to come back because the company went off the rails. So we'll see what Bob Iger does. But Bob Iger is not going to change the woke culture at Disney, despite what people originally said.
Yeah, I think that's right. And the speaking of like interesting backgrounds, like I was doing a deep dive into DeSantis's, and I think there's something in his working middle class roots that make him potentially independent and populist oriented. But it looks like somebody was recruiting him. I mean, in the sense that he goes from middle class Florida family, Yale undergrad, Harvard Law, Guantanamo, a special gig legal counsel Guantanamo. legal counsel to the SEALs in Fallujah,
Oh boy.
and then promoted for Congress.
Oh
And when he
boy.
initially gets there, he's hanging out with like all the neocons and all those people.
Oh
It's
boy.
like somebody who recruited him clearly recruited him thinking that he would be their person. That doesn't mean he actually will be once
He might have broken away. I mean, people.
I think in certain respects he definitely has. I think that's why they started talking about him versus Trump. They want to take out both at the same time.
Oh, well, that's obvious. That's obvious. Yeah. I mean, you'd have to be a retard to believe that's going on. But I mean, yeah, he could have been a guy who was using them, Robert, for the ride.
Yeah. Well, I think he's a working middle class background and gave him an independent streak,
right?
That has surprised some people.
And what's going to happen with Kerry Lake out there with her challenges there?
It's a challenge that should be taken seriously, but it's just very hard for the court to get serious attention from the court system. It'll be particularly bad in Arizona because even your Republican judges are establishment oriented.
Right.
Tied to the same in Arizona and Georgia, there were sort of unique problems. The old school Republican establishment that has a good number of votes, 5% or so, in around Phoenix, 5% or so around Atlanta, is just enough to swing an election if it's close and competitive. And they just refuse to bet. They would rather liberal Democrats win than a populist Republican.
Right. Yeah. The only one I missed was Ron Johnson in Wisconsin for my predictions, and
it's so. The state's so rural. That's the difference.
Right. But also, I think McConnell may have flooded some money in there to Johnson.
Well, if that state was, it's like 2/3 rural, small town. If that state had he had the same problem in the suburbs that everybody else had. Right. It's just the suburbs don't matter as much.
Right.
But it's weird. The suburbs in the middle of the country trended Democratic again, like they did in 2020, like they did in 2018. The suburbs on the coast went the other direction. So from Miami to New York City to Chicago to LA, Orange County, California trended Republican.
Yeah.
New York trended heavily.
It's heavily in New York.
The only hypothesis I have currently from that is maybe people that are around Democratic governance from top to bottom are like, we want nothing to do with this.
Right.
And in the middle of the country, they have a lot of Republican governance, so they're not blaming Democrats as much as like in New York City. I mean, that was a massive backlash. You're talking about 20, 25 point movement in the suburbs. That was across the board. I mean, Schumer's race was within 11, 12 points. That should have normally never. He won by 35 last time.
Wisconsin, I think they went around and cleaned up the voter rolls a little bit there too, right?
Yeah, they cleaned up voter rolls, and they have less mail-in voting. They have a lot more early voting, but less mail-in voting.
Right.
But something's going on in the suburbs there because they keep trending no matter who it is. So Johnson won because he did so much better in the rural parts of the state, and in particularly the working class north, the part of the state that voted for Joe McCarthy, that also voted for Fighting Bob LaFollette. They voted 7 to 8 points more.
Fighting Bob LaFollette? I haven't heard that name in a long time. That's great.
Same part of the same neck of the woods. It's that logging country.
I don't understand the difference between these two states that used to be the same, and that's Minnesota and Wisconsin. Is it the Somalians that tipped Minnesota? I mean, what happened to Minnesota?
It's the Twin Cities. So like the big difference, like the Norwegians in Minnesota also trended heavily Republican, just as they did in Wisconsin. But the difference is in Wisconsin, 2/3 of the votes come from outside, don't come from Milwaukee area or Madison.
Right.
They come from rural small towns for the most part. In Minnesota, almost 60% of the vote comes from the Twin Cities and surrounding.
So you're blaming what we call the Prince effect.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Basically, it's also the Swedes. I think the Swedes are trending Democratic. They're kind of, there's a.
Yeah. Where were they before? They were farmers.
Yeah. The Swedes and the Yankees tend to vote alike. Like New Hampshire trended heavily Democratic. Maine trended Democratic. So, and the only thing that, and some of Minnesota trended Democratic in 2020. It was a 1-point state in 2016. It was 7 points in 2020.
Is he the fattest governor, or is the Illinois guy the fattest governor?
The Illinois guy, and he's connected to the Hyatt food chain. I mean, the
when
Hyatt.
You say food chain, you mean food?
Yeah, well, the Hyatt family, long history of corruption there. Right. I mean, how does a little lawyer, tax lawyer in 1920 Chicago? How does his family end up owning the Hyatt hotel chain?
Interesting.
It's like, who was it that he was an accountant and tax lawyer for in the 1920s? He had a small boutique law firm. Mm-hmm. And what it is, he was cutting deals that allowed him to get a lot of prime real estate with the help of certain enforcement operations. And that's where that Pritzker cash, I think, really came from.
Don't forget the pretty little Hilton girl, speaking of another hotel chain.
Oh, speaking of which, by the way, I have a case against an arbitration case against Hyatt
Right.
that they wanted to quote something I said on this show in a deposition.
Right.
I
In
don't even remember what it
this
was.
show?
In this
Oh,
show,
you're-
I just saw it and they couldn't get the video to work, so they didn't play it.
Wow.
wow.
Holly, this is
Look
great.
at how that's horrendous. Look at this lawyer talking bad about the Great Hyatt chain.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
That's
That's
great.
awesome. We're making it
If I
big
get
time.
indicted, it would be great.
So
I get a subpoena.
Speaking of indictments, Robert and Mark, if you get close to Hillary again, could you actually accidentally spill a little holy water on her? It's a theory I'm working on.
Interesting.
I've only met her once at Yale. Like you meet Clinton, and he's very natural, sociopathic and sociable at the same time.
Oh,
Sure.
yeah.
Hillary
He's
is just
smooth.
mean, cold
Yeah.
fish.
She's
cold
surly.
fish.
She's just surly and bitter.
I
Yeah,
probably would like Clinton, actually. In
Bill
person, I have a
Clinton,
feeling
It's
probably
hard
enjoy
not
it.
to like Bill as long as you don't detect the evil. Hunter Thompson had the best description of him
What?
in 1992, where Hunter said, "There's no question that Bill Clinton is addicted to this and this and this. The question isn't what Bill Clinton is addicted to. Is there anything he's not addicted to?"
It's
And I
funny.
was like-
I was over Richard Lewis's house one night and he was showing me a picture on his wall, and it's him and Bill Clinton. And Clinton's laughing his ass off. And in the photo, Richard's like leaning in, whispering to him. And he says, I go, what are you saying here? And on the right of the frame is like a girl's elbow. And he's saying to Bill Clinton, can you shove over? I'm trying to box this girl out of the photo. I'm dumping her tomorrow. And Clinton's just like, oh,
Exactly. That would be classic Clinton. He's
Yeah.
had this deep, like if you were close to him, well, one, he carried himself really well. The
Yeah.
only people, he and Trump are the two people that walk into a room and they own the room.
Yeah.
Just physically possess it.
Yeah, what's weird? Clinton once said the thing he misses about the presidency is walking into a room and not hearing "Hail to the Chief." And I thought, is he joking, or maybe it is? I don't know. It might be something that gets under your skin after a while.
Well,
Having your own soundtrack everywhere you go would be a weird.
Yeah.
well, that was a joke in that movie with Jack Lemmon and what's his name, where they both played ex-presidents.
Oh God, that was great. James Garner.
Yeah, James Garner.
My fellow Americans.
Oh, I never remembered that.
And
one.
they had their own version, remember, of Hail to the Chief that they played.
Yeah,
Oh,
yes.
it's an obscure film. Oh wow, I don't.
No, it was a fun movie. It was
a
really
fun
fun. Okay, Etienne de Gaulle is telling you, Mark.
With chili cheese, egg and bacon. In-N-Out is good fast food.
Don't forget Cantor's.
On 15. Don't forget Cantor's is not the greatest deli in the world. Let me put it that way. It's a great place to hang out. And I've performed in the kibitz room, Eric, the Yiddish word of today, kibitz, which is in the back of Cantor's, where they have a musical stage and a piano and stuff. And a lot of performers in LA have played the kibitz room, which is in back of Cantor's on Fairfax. Just a little Hollywood trivia there.
Wow, nice.
That's one of the things I learned in LA. It was like I learned in the South, if certain default rules when it comes to restaurants, I prefer black-owned barbecue restaurants.
That's a smart idea.
Yeah. Then I learned the value of Greek diners in different places all across the country.
Right.
But that was the others. Like if it's not a Jewish deli, it's not a deli.
Right. That's what happened to Jerry's in the Valley. It was a very popular deli, and then they went with a continental plus Jewish deli menu, and everybody fled in horror. And just regular tourists went in there, and everybody went to Art's, deli a little bit across the street and up the road. And Jerry's did not survive COVID. I'll put it that way. They're gone.
No, it didn't. I mean, they were trying to sue a buddy of mine that has a restaurant in Marina Del Rey.
Right.
They were blaming him for their problems. It's like, no, you guys' problems go way past.
Yeah. Tell me again about this German coup, Robert, because I don't know.
I don't think it's legit. I think it's a QAnon thing. But they basically, here's what I think the Germans are trying to do. They want to ban the AfD. The AfD is surging in
What's
Eastern
the AfD?
Germany.
Oh,
they're the populist party in Germany.
Right. That's right.
And so I think they want to ban them, and I think they're going to use as a pretext this so-called coup attempt.
Okay.
So they looked at January 6th, and they're like, let's recreate that here in the States.
Oh, that's a great idea. Now tell me about the Polish declining the German missile battery, the Patriot missile battery, and then accepting it now. Did we put the pressure on the Poles to accept the Patriot missile batteries on their border as a gigantic target to anyone who's Polish? I mean, for the love of God.
They are in such a fascinating conundrum because you have this sort of ultra nationalists that are in control in Poland.
Okay.
who, on the one hand, don't like the EU's cultural agenda or
They loved
immigration
Trump,
agenda.
for Christ's sake, years ago, right?
Yes. But on the flip side, they want back part of Ukraine and they hate Russia.
The western part of Ukraine they want.
But they don't trust the Germans. And so you have this. I mean, what they really want is they want Polish-Lithuania back.
Right.
You know,
Is it any wonder they got into trouble in 1939?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, look what they're doing. These schmucks cannot leave well enough alone. You got a country called Hungary. All they got to do is do what Hungary did, but they cannot leave well enough alone.
What happens if like 6 million Ukrainians flood into Poland? Because that's the most likely location if things that the winter keeps getting worse.
The mayor boxer, the boxer Klitschko.
Oh yeah, Vlad. Was it Klitschko?
Klitschko, yeah, said yesterday that prepare to leave and evacuate Kiev because your dream is coming true. I mean, 6 million are going to start moving out of. There's nothing left in Kiev.
Exactly.
They're launching 70 missiles every week. It's like missile day. The Russians just go, all right, it's Wednesday, time to launch 70 missiles, which they could have done a year ago, but obviously they didn't do it.
Yeah, no, I mean they escalated slowly, but now they're to the point. I mean, supposedly the U.S. analysts keep claiming they're going to run out of missiles. There's no evidence of that.
Apparently not. Yeah, apparently not, because they I saw on eBay they even had some missiles I could have bought. So yeah, they're still around. I mean, Amazon still has some missiles.
Oh, those guns are going everywhere. I mean, maybe that's the other utility. The Lord of War, he can help direct where that all those arms floating around out of that we sent to Ukraine.
Right, but I'm saying, regarding the anti-missile, the Patriot missile thing on the Polish border, once it's engaged as a tracking device, that's actually an act of war that Russian fighter jets can now destroy that because they can't destroy it in mid-flight, right, Robert?
Yeah.
So that, I mean, that's an incredibly provocative move on the part of both the Germans and the Poles. I mean, the move itself is like, we dare you to blow up this missile battery, right?
Well, and I guess Times Man of the Year is Zelensky and the Ukrainian people. Isn't that it? I mean, people forget they actually did make Adolf Hitler Man of the Year.
I've got a copy of a cover inside with Himmler.
Wasn't Bin Laden too?
I have one with Heinrich Himmler Man of the Year. So there's been a long history of Time Men of the Year.
My favorite one is that Trump got a fake one made and had it
that was brilliant.
Had it framed up in a bunch of different places.
Yeah. I know he's not keeping up with your memes, but I mean, he's got to come back and compete with DeSantis on the memes. Robert, you're right.
So we were interviewing Sargon of Akkad, Carl Benjamin, and he was explaining, having slept with 100+ people is not, a good thing for women, but okay for men. And Viva was like, people sleep with more than 100 people? What in the world? What is going on here? So that's where those
you were falling out, Barnes.
That's classic Viva response because it was so sincere. He was like, "That happens, really? That occurred?" I was like, "Will Chamberlain, what was it, 10,000?" He said, right?
Right. Well, like I said, every year they used to have a party at Will Chamberlain's house in the Hollywood Hills, and hundreds of people would show up for this party. I mean, he was long dead, Robert. He was long dead. But I remember jumping up and down with tons of people on his giant circular bed. And then one of the girls reached under the bed and opened a drawer, and there were hundreds of porno films, Betamax from the 70s. And we put them on. We were watching on some big screen Will Chamberlain's porno collection while jumping up and down on his circular bed. So, yeah, there's a lot of truth to Will Chamberlain's legacy. But, I mean, if Will Chamberlain had been captured by the Russians, I don't know who he would have given up to get Will Chamberlain back because he was on the Lakers at the time. So,
well, I mean, the interesting thing is how many I guess do we know if LBJ had a bunch of illegitimate kids? Because he seemed like the type.
Well, we do know the Madeline Brown kid. Yeah, the kid's a dead ringer for him. He eventually died of some sort of rare cancer when he was around in his 20s. But holy cow! I mean, he looks exactly like LBJ. And then there's the Valente kid, girl who runs Warner Brothers. I hate to mention her because I may have to do business with her, but nevertheless, the rumors were that Jack Valente was not the father of the Valente girl. Let me put it.
I thought Jack batted the other way.
According to Jay Gahoover, yes. Yeah. So that was also
So
fed
maybe
the
he really didn't mind too much.
right. That also fed the rumors, Robert, that Jack Valenti
Right.
was not the father of the Valenti girl. And the doting on her by LBJ was just insane in the Oval Office. I mean, he was treating her like JFK did with his two kids, his own two kids in the Oval Office. So I don't know, because she is really short, even to this day, like Jack Valenti was short. And LBJ was very tall, and she is short to this day, very short woman. But the Madeline Brown kid, no doubt about it. And in fact, LBJ left the lawyers instructions on, and they took care of the kid for many years financially.
What do you think the odds Chelsea is not Bill Clinton's daughter?
Chelsea Manning? That's
Chelsea
rare.
I mean, she looks a lot like Webb Hubble when you match them up. Webb Hubble looks much more like her father than.
Oh, I
Bill's
forgot
daughter.
about that storyline. Yeah, that's right. That's an old greatest hits album story. Yeah, I forgot that. Whatever happened to Hubble? He must be dead.
Check it out. Georgina's coming through, Mark. Thank you so much.
Maybe I shouldn't be a Democrat. Actually told me maybe I shouldn't. Merry Christmas to you. I'm still listed as a Democrat, so I can operate behind enemy lines. I was going to switch to independent. I thought, you know what? I could find out more intelligence, Robert, if I stay on the party rolls.
Well, you know a guy who was accused of having a bunch of kids who most likely didn't, because he actually didn't really sleep around because he liked to just hang out and behave like a teenage boy, was actually Elvis.
Oh, that's true. That is true. That he hung out with the mafia all the time, and they were like teenagers. I mean, his biggest crimes were like having a theater open at night with just him and Anne Margaret to watch a movie, and then not having sex with Anne Margaret. I mean, that's hard to do.
That was Charlie Sheen's theory about why Tom Cruise was gay. He's like 16 years old. You know, we set him up with one of the hottest prostitutes anywhere, and all he does is talk to her for 3 hours.
Okay, but there's a flip side to Tom Cruise, because Cher told me that she had sex with him when he was in New York, and that he wasn't gay, and he was going to art school in New York at the time. So, but then she had sex with Geffen, who turned out to be gay, and a long love affair with Geffen. And Geffen talks about it in the HBO documentary, how she was the love of his life, and then he became gay. So maybe she turns him gay. I don't know.
Because it wasn't the joke that if you're a Cher or Barbra Streisand fan, that probably gay.
Right. But she said that Cruise wasn't. But I'll tell you something. I had a lawyer who married two different women, and they both became lesbians. He divorced both of them. So we would tease him all the time. He was a great lawyer, but anyone he married became a lesbian.
I know when they put the nice, cool Malibu beach in, finding a legit hotel in Malibu.
Yeah.
Everybody would run into in LA, say, "Oh, that's just for all of David Geffen's boyfriends."
Could be. Could be.
Oh, we got some more tips on locals, by the way. Wells Mortensen, good story behind the competition. Let me see. Asking, speaking of spook exchanges, only Eastern Bloc mole to ever make it to CIA, Carol Kocher, exchanged for Anatoly, I don't know how to say the name, Sharensky or something like that, still alive. Hush Hush / Unstructured episode.
I don't know anything
Interesting.
about it.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of those. I mean, The Bridge of Spies was a decent little movie, and I mean, it's interesting. I mean,
yeah.
There's a bunch of those trades that we don't know anything about because they were kept so hard.
For us, I mean, we only deal with American stories, so I mean, that's up to Robert if he wants to cover international crap. But we kind of still stay with Americans. That sounds like too foreign a story.
That's what I'd worry about. USSR shopping cart wants to know why there's no video interviews of Abraham Bolden.
There's plenty of videos all over the web. What are you talking about? There's plenty of them.
Are they video interviews? I know he's done a lot of phone interviews.
There's plenty of interviews with him. All right.
And then Wells Mortensen said, Mark, rocket systems are in place in smaller countries surrounding the theater for some time, all operated by Germans. 75 years after they were not politely asked.
I'm sorry, go on. I'm sorry, read that again.
All operated by Germans, 75 years after they were not very politely asked to sod off. Tables turning.
I don't know what that means.
I don't know. That seems inside knowledge. I don't know.
I don't know. This was a huge story this week again, because I think it's the Patriot missile batteries, Robert, that they're putting in there, the top of the line, and they can target Russian jets. And I think there's more to this story than old missile batteries.
You said any chance that James Baker's also gay? Because you said Comey's gay.
I don't know anything about this guy, James Baker, to be honest.
He was general counsel for.
No. I know his bio, but I don't know anything
Right.
about his lifestyle. Yeah, I don't know. But they usually get guys to do this kind of work who have something.
Birds of a feather flock together.
But also something in their closet, quote unquote,
right,
that they could play with themselves. I have no idea, whether he's gay or not. But to get removed from the FBI and then become legal counsel of Twitter on Monday morning, I mean, it's highly suspicious.
It does show that Musk has these like real blind spots to a certain degree. In other words, that
somebody was pointing
like
out
Trump in that respect, and then he doesn't recognize.
I mean, Robert, how do you let this guy operate for weeks in the office? Right. In the office, what are you doing in there? I'm busy. I'll be right out. Out.
Well, hold on. Let me push back. There's some speculation that he could have been right. That apparently, when he was at Tesla, he had a giant problem in like 2008 that everything was getting leaked to the press all the time. So he did a company-wide memo and made it look like it just went to everybody, but it was individualized memos, and each line had 2 spaces in it. So if you got the one that had 2 spaces after a period in line 1, that was Bill. If it was this one, it was. And so then when the next story came out, and went, oh, okay, found the line and got him out. Now, the reason why I'm pushing back a little bit is because he brought that out, and then he put out a tweet, said, just found out Sunday. And then Peter Hyatt, who does statement analysis, pointed out on Twitter, who just found out? Where's the pronoun? Because that's a statement analysis deal. Now, hearing about the Tesla thing, then seeing him do that, which is putting distancing language on him, he freaking might have known and let the guy vet the documents, then gets with Taibbi and says, hey, so Matt, what'd you get? Right. And then he can say, okay, here's all the shit that was said.
I'll tell you somebody else used to do that was James Angleton to try to find Russian spies, Robert. He would send out memos to find moles in the U.S. operation doing a similar type thing with documents, sending them out and see who responded and what their moves were to demolify, which was his job. Angleton was actually the guy looking for moles within our world, not the Russian world. His job was to find moles, and Hansen and these other guys later on all appeared in FBI. Remember how many moles popped up in the 80s and 90s in U.S. intelligence? Oh, yeah. I mean, we were riddled back then. I mean,
high-ranking people, and especially it's because the MI6 and the CIA refused to recognize that one of their own, from their culture, their caste, their class, would be the likely traitor. They went after everybody else but him. I mean, it was like the big so-called Israeli spy. They blamed on a bunch of stuff. 90% of what they blamed him for, he wasn't responsible.
You talking about Pollock or?
Yeah, Pollock. Yeah, Pollock was not the source for a whole bunch of stuff.
I know. He was
and they falsely blamed it on him because they were still convinced that it couldn't be people like Alder James. I mean, and it wasn't like Alder James was hiding it. Oh, you got $1 million house. I got a $300,000 car.
No. They were flagrant.
Yeah, and it's like, it can't be him. He went to the same prep school as me.
Right. He's a good guy. He goes to Catholic church every day like Hansen. He prays, and just.
Yeah. Remember that the big MI6 guy who, was part of the same elite schools, all that background, and was working.
It goes further back than that to Klaus Fuchs, the atom spy.
Yeah.
It goes back, to the Rosenbergs, bro. Yeah. It goes further back. I mean, here's my question to you. The British MI6 and the British are always, I think they use us like their bully. And I think they deceive us to do their bidding a lot. Did they deceive us to do their bidding with this Ukrainian-Russian thing? And how much, because we're not hearing, here's my question to you. We keep hearing about us and only one other country, and that's the UK in terms of Ukraine. We don't hear it's France. We don't hear Portugal. We don't hear Spain. What is this sick, twisted military relationship that we have with the UK? Are they constantly deceiving us into doing their bidding?
Yeah, it's the old WASP. I mean, the MI6 was critically behind going after Trump in 2016.
Yeah,
Russiagate and Spygate doesn't happen without MI6's complicity. It's not a coincidence that they had one of the key guys responsible, who was one of the head people at MI6, resign the day Trump was inaugurated.
Right.
It was the Brits' attempt to calm Trump down over what took place.
Right.
And so Trump only partially understood what had taken place.
Right. But
The,
their obsession is with the Russians, Robert, and
Oh, yeah.
they are second and third, or third and
Well,
second in arms.
It's that
in
old
arms sales.
Anglophile WASP elite. I mean, it goes all the way
Right,
back.
but it's also money, because the two
Yeah.
are obviously a distant second from us as the
Right.
two largest arms sales countries in the world. Russia and the UK are tied for second, a distant second, but they are arch competitors for that second slot. Nobody knows, not many people realize that. And that's their obsession, besides the Russophobe cultural thing, Robert.
Well, that's
right?
at the end of Lord of War. Nicolas Cage is, that's his final line. He goes, "What you don't understand is that your president does more arms deals in a day than I do in a year."
Right. But I'm
And
saying, did they bait us into this Ukrainian insane?
Oh,
foreign
I mean,
policy?
people connected to the State Department, CIA were obsessed with this. So
Right.
Amanda Milius was talking to me about this years ago. She said everybody in the State Department was obsessed with Ukraine.
Right.
That was their number one preoccupation, their number one focal point. And the Brits are just on board with us and gung ho as anybody for it.
Right.
Their media's terrible.
Because
They've
my
printed
theory,
more
is,
lunatic-
regarding the Steele memo was that it was actually the memo of
Hunter Biden.
Hunter Biden, and they just switched the names on it.
Confession for projection.
Yeah, a lot of that would apply.
Yeah, I think they just had a Hunter Biden memo, and they had all his peccadillos, none of which apply to Trump. I mean, Hunter Biden had taken $2 million and invested in the Moscow Madams, the mayor of Moscow's wife, who ran a upscale operation. That's all Hunter Biden. I mean, if there's piss tapes, it's Hunter Biden.
When people don't know, Moscow has its own little political crew, its own little mafia oligarchic ties that are totally separate from Putin.
Right. And those political people in the mayors and in the political world there run the girls and sex trafficking and drugs and everything
all kinds
else.
of stuff.
Yeah. I can't wait to get there. I just really got to get over to Moscow quickly.
Have you ever been to Russia?
No, I'm dying to go. I really want to go to Moscow.
Oh, apparently Musk is not promising that he's going to pay them out those golden parachutes.
All right, let me ask you this. If all these people sue the Charlie Kirks, the Dan Bonginos, the people who have been burned here, where does that money come from?
Well, I don't think they will have monetary damage claims. They would be more declaratory relief kind of claims. I mean, I think because the only people they could sue is the U.S. government.
Right.
And
First Amendment.
Yeah, and the problem is because of conservatives on the court, there's no Bivens claims available.
Right.
Unless it's a Fourth or Eighth Amendment claim.
Right.
And none of these are.
Interesting.
That's where the conservatives have done a lot of disservice. I get why they did it, but gutting the constitutional remedies was a bad idea.
Well, what happened to the Berenson suit? It's kind of disappeared.
It settled, and he got
settled monetarily, Robert?
I think what he disclosed, I don't think he got any money. I think what he got some discovery, which he disclosed some of.
Right.
But that was sort of the scale of it, as far as
he believes that if he keeps attacking conservatives, they'll let him back into the club.
Yeah, I mean, or he wants to be a gatekeeper in his own world, but whatever it is, he keeps showing up outside of limited COVID context. He keeps showing up on the institutional narrative side of the aisle.
Right. On all kinds of weird subjects that he doesn't know anything about.
Yes.
It sounds like a spaghetti against the wall type philosophy.
Yeah. Well, you got the Horace Mann background in the New York Times, and he's covering the CIA, then he's writing CIA spook books. That just sounds very fishy.
There was a strange guy who taught at Horace Mann who may or may not have done something to himself in prison at some point.
That guy. So do you think Elon will be deleted?
No, I think he's bought himself immunity or enough immunity. He's too high profile in a certain way now.
This guy may be talking about permanently deleted.
Oh yeah, but I mean as to both. As to both, I think it'd be tricky.
Well, he did essentially say he was not going to take any open car rides.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He did. He said, "I'm not going to go any open parades." You're not going to see me do any of that.
I mean, I'm glad they solved the political assassination of the former prime minister of Japan. That was nicely done. You talk about a story that disappeared of Abe. I mean, wow. There's no Oliver Stone movie on Abe.
If you're going to whack Elon, you'd probably get Amber Heard, a drugged up Amber Heard, to do it.
You're going to have to get a chick in close. Yeah.
Yep.
You're going to have to go. What is DJ Ching?
It just took a minute. They're saying there's got to be a bad guy out there. Osama bin Laden was the guy until 2010. Now Donald J. Trump has been the guy since then.
I mean, Putin's still the reigning bad guy until dethroned.
That's true.
In World Wrestling Federation 7 that we're in now. WWE, WWF, midnight and
Huh. The FTX. I mean, they're losing money because they're gutting great franchises with woke nonsense.
Oh yeah, no, they're hemorrhaging money from box office. Yeah,
Kathleen Kennedy has probably destroyed more money from Disney than just about anyone, right?
Anyone in history by a long mile, especially if you look at implied value, right? I mean, billions lost on how she damaged the brand of Star Wars alone, and Marvel's now doing the same thing. I mean, they're just gutting big brands.
Mm-hmm. Well, they're hands-on.
Everybody's doing it though.
Yeah, Marvel's doing it too. There are micromanagers there. There's a guy at Marvel who's the equivalent of her, who goes over every frame of every film, and I don't have the time to get into it, but they're really hands-on. Carney's over Pink's. Carney's is another similar place to Pink's. It's a railroad car on Sunset that it's a tourist attraction if you want to get stuck in a railroad car. The Fire with Barnes is the best. Okay, thanks.
What is your favorite old school place in it? Mine was the Downtown Pacific dining car.
For what kind of food? I mean, I worship the House of Pies. See, I'm a House of Pies guy, and nobody knows about the House of Pies. I remember growing up as a kid, there was a comic named Jackie Vernon. It used to be on Ed Sullivan. And Jackie Vernon had an imaginary slideshow with a clicker in his hand, and he would show there's one of the greatest comedy acts of all time. He would show these, here's me with my wife on vacation. Here's just me. Here's my wife. That was the end of the vacation. And he would do this slideshow. And at one point, he said, best news I heard since they closed House of Pies. And I said to my parents, I was like 7. I'm going, what the hell's House of Pies? And they go, we don't know. So I move out here and I discover House of Pies. And it's what it is. It's got a coffee shop type menu like my uncle had in New York, a coffee shop. And I love House of Pies. So that's my go-to office. It's big. It's got outdoor seating, booths. The biggest menu in Hollywood is at House of Pies. Some people go to Swingers, which was a movie. There's different favorite places like that.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird places and niche places that tourists really don't know about here. The Formosa Cafe has the worst Chinese food in LA, but it has the hottest girls in LA. So people go and they go, hey, this Chinese food is great. And everyone knows it sucks. But it's kind of another establishment place, the Formosa, which is depicted in LA Confidential when you see that is Lana Turner situation with Kevin Spacey, who we mentioned earlier in LA Confidential.
What's that old place in Santa Monica that's a kind of an old school that they did like some of the Goliath episodes filmed in? It's like an old school dive bar kind of thing. It looks like has a ship's wheel outside. I'm trying to I've been there a couple of times. I do like that place.
It's a steakhouse, right?
It's more like just like a bar / but combined food, but it's been there for forever. Maybe somebody in the chat can remember I've been there like a dozen times, but I can never remember the name. I just know the vague location.
Randy's in Inglewood.
I haven't been to Randy's.
No, that's the donut. That's the giant donut.
Oh yeah, I have. Okay, yeah. I've been there. I don't
think that made it either. I don't think that survived COVID either, Randy's.
There's so many like little Chinese places in LA with donuts, and I never understood that. I was like, I don't trust these are great donuts.
Yeah.
It was like when I was in the strip malls and they had Chinese places. They were Cajun chicken, and I was like,
there was a place in Hollywood near where I lived, and I was writing for the Weekly. I had to do the
Shay J. That's the place I'm thinking of.
Oh yeah, I had to do a best of issue for the LA Weekly one year, and there was a donut place, Alex's Donuts, right on Franklin, and I went in. I did an article on Alex's Donuts. On purpose, because we got free donuts for a year from Alex's Donuts on Franklin as the best in LA. The LA Weekly votes Alex's Donuts the best in LA. It was simply because I lived next door.
Hey guys, a lot of things are coming in here.
Okay, let's see what you got.
No. Twitter Files 3 release removal of Trump, and somebody just stated here, holy hell, today's Twitter Files drop a smoking gun. Direct collusion with FBI, DHS, ODNI to censor Trump and MAGA people.
Well, the FBI confirmed that in that deposition they did with the state of Louisiana last week. State of Louisiana.
A lot of this has been released in those depositions, right, Robert?
Yeah.
Shout out to AJ from the Y Files YouTube channel. I'm not familiar with that.
Never heard.
That's interesting. The Y Files. Yeah, I hadn't heard of them.
Just passing thought. Love to see a Barnes sidebar with Whitney Webb. David had her on.
Yeah, Viva interviewed her.
Okay. Thank you. Just passing thought.
Just me. Elon is the only guy with his own ICBM, so he's the guy Biden thinks can't own a cannon.
Does he have ICBMs? Is that true?
Well, he's got satellites and rockets, so I guess that's
He kind of does, yeah.
That's interesting. What's that one? I just said that, didn't I? No, Jeb Bush. I'm sorry. No, I thought it was. I think it's
in part by some hedge fund backers. They were the ones to put part of it in motion, but I think it was they were second. First in line, I believe, was Victoria Nuland in the State Department. The state that started with the Obama State Department. Then it went over to the.
Well, we remember when the Russia thing started out of Brooklyn the night she lost, right? By what's his name, the campaign manager, Rob Pussyface, whatever his name was.
Yeah, that was. You see some of those votes. You know, the rumor she went nuts. She started throwing stuff and started going berserk.
Yeah.
Well, I can imagine.
Enjoyed seeing all the misery. That was like classic liberal tears, South Park style.
Philippe, they always say that LA best French dip. Again, I don't know what a French dip is. I don't know Philippe's. They always bring it to the game. I eat it because guys bring it to the game. We go to Dodger game. There's always a guy who brings that with him. And I go, it's really a sloppy, messy, drippy sandwich. I'm not a big fan of. Everybody always goes, best French dip in LA. I don't even know what French dip is. I don't know.
There is. I mean, Melissa's is good in Santa Monica for old school French food.
Right.
The local chef. And I do. And my Maestro's, both the steakhouse and the Ocean Place are good.
I mean, New Orleans has the best French food, in the United States. I would.
Oh, yeah. LA is not really a foodie town.
No, I mean,
San Francisco, New York, and New Orleans are America's foodie towns.
Yeah.
Let me see. Rumble, Lost Court 23. Barnes needs to have an appearance with the council on future conflict.
What is that?
I don't know.
He's probably the council on future conflict. Whoever said that.
You could be right. And we got locals tips that have come in. Again,
we're on unstructuredlocals.com. And what are you on? Viva Barnes Law Locals.com? Is that
Viva Barnes Law.locals?
And what are we, Hunley?
Unstructured.
Right, but there's people who are members of both, Robert. There's people who yeah.
Oh, yeah. Unstructured.locals.com.
Completely different operation.
Content from Mark Groubert and Eric Hunley, including insider interviews, unusual scripts.
Yeah, there's some unusual documents too. And plus, we've got the interviews that Eric is releasing of the Dallas trip, right? Mm-hmm. Of different segments, because some of them are pretty
Part 2 of Jim DiEugenio is out yesterday.
Yeah, Robert, if you want to see a great interview, me and DiEugenio, the two of the top guys who know this stuff, are like two baseball aficionados talking inside baseball. We're like 15 years old, just going on for an hour and a half while Hunley's filming us. That was fun, Eric. That was a lot of fun.
Mad Scientist is being ironic.
A very structured interview. Oh yeah.
How go? So you can still use your fingers even though the wrist is broken.
Yeah, but it's causing problems because I get caught typing, and I usually am in searing pain by noon or 1 p.m. every day.
So are you just trying to type one-handed then?
It's very hard because I work on computers. So I've been doing the day job.
Like, for all the typing I've done over the years, I've never really learned how to do both hands.
Neither. Yeah.
I go finger, boom, boom.
That's what I've been doing.
I can do fast,
but
it's still finger.
Me too. And I went to typing school and it didn't take, I just, Yeah, I'm
not super fast, but I've kind of just fall to doing it. It's, my wife was yelling at me earlier. Stop it. Do it one-handed. And Mark's probably right. Mark's like, get a sling.
Yeah, the sling, it takes a lot of the weight off it and the pressure. So you don't do stuff by accident with the arm. That was an old school. Not that you shouldn't have a cast, but I think it's a cast sling combo is probably
How long does it take for that to heal?
God, I don't know.
That was my only pot experience was I woke up like I went to the wrong bathroom, slipped, fell down.
Right.
And I didn't realize I was falling down because I'd taken some pills to fall asleep.
Right.
And so my nose was about to hit the ground. So I put my arm down fast and just shredded all my muscles in my arm. Wow. Just all the way up and down.
Wow.
So it was like the pain was annoying. So my little sister's husband made a brownie. And apparently he was experimenting. So this was unknown until later. It was like 4 times the average dosage. But when I was young, I occasionally smoked. I was like, but I never inhaled because I hate things going in my lungs.
Right.
So, like Clinton,
Sounds like Clinton. Sounds like
I
Bill
really didn't
Clinton.
inhale. I was like, man, this pot thing's so overrated. So I was sitting there eating the brownie, and I'm like, none of this ever has any effect on me. This is a bunch of crap. And my little sister says, you got to be careful because it can have a delayed effect.
About an hour from now, come
Yeah,
talk
it
to
did.
us.
I started laughing uncontrollably, and then I ended up in front of the movie screen with like the news channel on, which I hate because it's always accidents and bad stuff, and just laughing at everything, and then just froze, couldn't move. My little sister
Right.
came and said, "You okay? You okay?" And but I couldn't. I knew physically I should be able to move,
Right.
but I couldn't. I was there for like 6 hours, just sitting. I was like,
we covered in the Liddy episode when Liddy was busting Timothy Leary's Hitchcock estate down in how they were all watching on acid a film of just a waterfall. And the guy goes up, one of the sheriffs goes, "What are they doing? Watching porno? We could get them on porno?" He goes, "No, they're watching a waterfall, Liddy. I don't know what the deal is." So they thought they may have gotten him on a porno beef, but it was just guys on acid.
Well, what do you think about the recent Joe Rogan, Neil deGrasse Tyson debate about drugs? Because Rogan's argument is that certain drugs enhance the mind and help creative thinkers. Right. Tyson's argument is no, that the person, it diminishes mental capacity and causes more problems than goods over time. And he doesn't accept the premise that any artist benefits from it. And Rogan said that he thought some artists could only.
They're both right and they're both wrong. If it's an artist with an addictive personality, addictive nature, it's going to peak after a while and begin to decline on the other side. If it's a normal person and you're just using for inspiration, it is quite inspiring. But that's, again, 10% of the population is going to be addicted to it. And then you see the declination, like with Jimi Hendrix. Obviously, it inspired Hendrix. There's no doubt about it. Obviously, it inspired these people. But if you're an addict, then the downside happens. So there's a quick rocket to stardom that happens almost like a jet plane going straight up in the air from use, and providing an artistic muse through the narcotic, through the drugs, and then the decline happens equally as fast on the other side. But Rogan is coming at it, as I perceive, a normie and not an addict. So he's correct. Tyson is looking at it from a different scientific point of view than Carl Williams or whatever that professor's name at Columbia, who uses heroin every single day and advocates heroin use for Black people in Harlem so they could get pure heroin from this mutt. Not from him, but he says that the problem with the drugs is they're not pure. There's another leftist movement that everyone should have free, pure drugs. And in Seattle last summer, the politicians and free drug advocates gave out pure drugs on the street at a street fair. As crazy as that sounds, they gave out pure heroin, pure cocaine, and pure crystal meth to people who formed a line to get it. That's how crazy the progressive movement is on drugs, because A, they don't believe in addiction, and B, they believe group therapy can deal with anyone who is. They don't believe in incarceration. They don't believe in having cut drugs on the street. They believe that's a problem. So it's a multitude of weirdness up there that's spreading, because the normal who are now done with the legalization of marijuana are moving on by their own admission to harder drugs. Normal who lobbied to get us where we are today over 35 years, to get us to this point where super powerful marijuana is now causing a 200 to 300% increase in Colorado emergency rooms. The states that have legalized it first have the most medical incidents because of the power of marijuana. And the older crowd thinks we're still in a Cheech and Chong movie, Robert.
Right.
And we're not in a Cheech and Chong movie anymore. The marijuana that's used today has such a high, and the people at home know this. I mean, they're vaping it. They're I'll just put out the word wax. I'll put out wax to you cats at home who know what I'm talking about. I mean, just thick. It's like the crack cocaine of pot.
Is that dabbing?
Yeah, dabbing or wax is literally the crack cocaine of pot. It's just completely concentrated, completely hallucinatory, completely driving people to ERs. And as what's his name said, Berenson, if you have any kind of schizophrenic tendencies, it exacerbates it and puts it over the top. And that's been demonstrated also in numerous studies. So that's creating all kinds of schizophrenic problems. But NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, is now going after harder substances because they've been so successful with pot. So there's a movement to decriminalize, which is not. Remember, Robert, it started out as decriminalization.
Right.
It didn't say legalization.
Right.
And that was a crock of shit.
And then it was medical.
The medical thing was the first fake out because you needed a prescription. Remember?
Yeah, in Venice, you could get it for $25. You just walk down the street. Hey, you know, you get the prescription in the front, you get the drugs in the back.
Right, but I'm saying the delegalization was not delegalization. The decriminalization, it was being pushed upon you by forces, you know, from NORML. Not just they didn't just quietly decriminalize marijuana. The reverse happened, the incredible pushing of legalization and usage of it to where now we're at the point where there's gummy bears because you got a bad back. I mean, think about the industry that sprung up where you go to Rite Aid or CVS and there's cannabinoid gummy bears that have been completely, there's no studies that indicate these actually work. This is now in the homeopathic world of vitamins.
Yeah, a buddy of mine designed a bunch of websites for pot ice cream. Because you're like, you know, you get the munchies, and you're eating the pot ice cream, then it gives you more munchies, so you have to keep eating the pot ice cream.
That's a great
idea.
Yeah,
exactly. But apparently, like pot.
We touched upon the Liddy episode, which I always am amused by, how Liddy and his crew try to use LSD to weaponize against their arch enemies, including Daniel Ellsberg, including Jack Anderson, where they come up with these harebrained schemes that they don't understand the nature of the drug. Right. They said, well, we're going to put it on Ellsberg's steering wheel. So when he's driving to the event, he's going to get high from LSD, and then he'll act like an idiot at the event. You know why that was canceled, that plan? Because it was the dead of winter, and they presumed that Ellsberg would be wearing winter gloves. That's why they canceled that. Now, Jack Anderson, who they also planned to dose with LSD, until Liddy said, why don't we just shoot him in the head? I don't understand. What is all this about LSD? Eric and I were contacted, or at least I was, by his grandson, Jack Anderson's grandson, who vindicated me and said everything I said about the Jack Anderson plot, he had told them. His grandchildren. This was a couple of days ago after we did the episode, so that was kind of cool. With Jack Anderson's grandkids.
Oh yeah, that's fascinating. Well, the CIA was always obsessed with LSD. It was their dream.
That's what I was saying. I didn't know that Liddy was, and that crew in the White House. They were also obsessed with LSD. And Liddy finally said, "Let's just shoot him in the head." And I don't know what you're dabbling in LSD. You know, why don't we just
school,
shoot
man?
Old school. Liddy just shoot him. What the hell, you know? And he's standing by. He goes, "Just call me. You have my number. If you want me to shoot him, of course I will. You know, no big deal." I mean, Liddy, like I was saying to Eric yesterday, realized or accepted or thought that we were at war. And he said, we're at war with these people who are on the left and the Weather Underground and the bombings and everything else. And you got to do what you got to do in war. And then based on that logic, he's not incorrect, Robert.
Right.
You know, I mean, if you say you're at war with these people, then, you know, shooting them in the head, you know, which may have happened to a guy in D.C. named Seth Rich, Robert.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I'm not buying the conventional. They get randomly robbed. You know,
no. In fact, I pointed out in the episode that is part of as he was trained himself, Liddy. That was part of one of their operations. If you were if a guy tried to double back to go to a house or a place you were burglarizing, that was authorized to be done to prevent him from coming back. And then I thought of Seth Rich. Liddy had written that in the 80s as an FBI operative movement was to do that, was to fake a mugging. Mm. So I never knew that until I studied Liddy's background a little bit more.
Yeah, a couple more tips from unstructured.locals.com.
Unstructured.
USSR shopping cart. Barnes, you will love this. The leader of group of USS Liberty surviving vets that blame Israel for the attack is a retired CIA agent.
Of course it is. I mean, you dig into that. The NSA is much more guilty than Israel is for what happened.
Right. That's why I don't really go into this.
And people get all like,
they just go berserk.
Yeah.
And by the way, I also hate the Jews, but that's not the real reason. I really am obsessed by this ship.
Yeah, exactly.
Give me a break.
It's obvious. It's
I
obvious.
know. And they just go crazy. They just think LBJ.
They got the super duper secret figure something out. And he's like, oh no, you're just a sucker in a sap taking an old.
The other one was that Jim Morrison's uncle started father started the Vietnam War because he was an admiral in the Gulf of Tonkin. So that Jim Morrison was a black op to distract us from the Vietnam War, and the Doors were also involved in deep state activities. And I go, if that's a band the deep state created, I'm rooting for the deep state to create more bands. You know what I mean?
Well, Karanatoff on Locals. Have you guys ever watched Alternative Views, the counterculture show out of Texas in the 70s and 80s? That was our show before YouTube.
You know what I'm getting with these comments? All the people are linked to the shows they're asking us if we've ever watched.
I don't know.
You ever see Jeffrey Bloom? Who's Jeffrey Bloom? Oh, that's my father. He works next door, and he's got a meat market over there. I mean, these comments are all linked to the shows that they're talking about, right? Did you ever have sex with my mother? No, I never did. But
well, and then somebody saying last beer worth of a suggestion, LSD being mentioned. That time CIA ordered 10 kilo mark of LSD from Czechoslovakia, right. And the invoice is archived. That's so true. The delivery took place. 1953 article is in New York Times.
That's true.
August 5th, 1976.
What are you hassling me for?
There's some debate about the number, whether they got the number right.
But
it probably was in that little French town. They experimented on that little French town and drove everybody nuts. People were jumping in the rivers.
Those numbers, that was for the entire U.S. government to get that amount, and they always like to buy in bulk. Let me just put it that way. I mean, if you're going to make one purchase, why go back? Plus, for everybody at home, LSD is extremely cheap to manufacture. It's not cocaine. I mean, even at its peak, and I use the word peak obviously two ways. I mean, 1,000 micrograms of LSD sold for $2, folks. Yeah.
Was that what you gave?
Very inexpensive drug.
Was that what you gave the guys in the jail in New York?
In upstate New York, yeah. Yeah, I gave them blotter acid, which was 250 milligrams. It was on paper, but even 1,000 micrograms, even 1,000 mic window pane might have sold for $5 at the peak. You didn't make money off of acid. Let me put it that way. You didn't make money off of acid. Nobody did, unless you were a mega dealer selling other products, because it just wasn't profitable like other substances.
Right.
Wow, insane. Okay, some super chats. Have you ever heard of the 300 Club conspiracy and the book on it by Dr. John Coleman?
I'm sure you have. You probably wrote the book. The way things are going. No, I've never heard of that.
All right, I don't know. Viva with Whitney Webb was good, but he doesn't know the U.S. history of corruption. Barnes and Whitney would be amazing.
No, you should now go back and interview the woman again. Is it a woman?
Yes, Whitney Webb.
No, they're very well respected.
Kind of an anti-deep state leftist reporter. She was at the Children's Health Defense Conference a couple of weeks ago.
Who did she write for?
Freelance.
What's her background?
Freelance now, I think.
But where is she? What's her background?
It was journalism, maybe The Nation, maybe something like that.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
all
forget.
over the place. Yeah.
Yeah, it was independent left.
Okay.
So like Matt Taibbi, though Taibbi at least had the Rolling Stones. But
something?
before Matt Taibbi was
Greenwald, yeah, she's pretty well respected.
Yeah, she is, particularly within that world.
Right.
Barnes typing with only one hand is by far the most shocking thing I've heard all week.
Yeah, that's
I can type really fast too, but
yeah, but you use two hands, right?
Oh yeah, normally. But I could do one hand just because I only use a finger.
Right,
anyway.
Alex, it's not black and white. Thank you. Yeah, it's not black and white.
Yep.
I've been on both sides of the issue. I can tell you that much. The problem with fentanyl is that it's it's obviously some type of humor, but the point of the matter is the problem with street drugs now, just to address that briefly, because everything is now made of fentanyl, and that includes Xanax, that includes any benzos. They are knockoff made by pill machines to look like pharmaceutical Xanax. And just to
I don't understand the logic of it, because killing off your customer base is not usually a good marketing plan.
Right. Unless you have who's the customer. If China is your customer,
well, China's the owner.
No, what I'm saying though is, again, there's that old joke of if you're getting something for free, then you're the product. Well,
let me
maybe you've got to look at it in that way.
just add the most recent news that I'm hearing about fentanyl. The phony drugs that are being made with fentanyl, like Xanax, they are now just on the street because everybody's hip to the fentanyl part of this. Everybody knows that these prescription drugs are now fentanyl. They are now manufacturing phony prescription bottles with phony scripts on the outside of the bottle. So when you buy it from the dealer, he shows you the prescription bottle with a label that says John Doe from Rite Aid. That's phony now. That's how far this is. That's what I'm hearing from.
Well, you knew it was headed there. I mean,
no, I didn't know it was headed there. So I'm reporting what I'm hearing. I didn't know anything. I'm an idiot. But I'm just saying the fact of the matter is this is where it's gone in terms of the fentanyl duplicity. It started out with, just to get into the weeds briefly, it started out with cutting it with fentanyl, cutting heroin with fentanyl. And now it's the creation of actual drugs made completely out of fentanyl. And these are pharmaceutical drugs, not street drugs anymore, folks. So that's why people who are doing cocaine, who are normal coke guys, are ODing because fentanyl's in the cocaine. That's why chicks who normally love taking Xanax are ODing because the pill that they thought was pharmaceutical Xanax is now fentanyl.
So what's your thoughts, Eric, as to why China, because I found it like if I was a drug dealer, this is a good way to lose my customer base.
Right. So it makes no sense from their end.
Right.
So now I have to step back and go, okay, so where's it coming from? It's coming from China. China's our enemy. What better way to harm another country than to poison the entire generation?
Well, you know why China would do it.
Of course. So
it's payback for the opium wars.
That's what I think.
So therefore, if they're feeding it in, who cares if the customers are dying off? There's still enough market there.
The barrels, just so you know, the giant 55-gallon drum barrels of powdered fentanyl cost like 2 freaking cents to make.
I mean, you make quick bucks now. It's basically forfeiting money going forward.
Right.
Or you're thinking that they don't mind because China will still continue to help fund it.
Right.
Correct.
Right. And eventually you're going to run out of people to overdose. It may be the greatest thing to ever happen to the United States in terms of a drug war that we never fought. This, as a backhanded method, may end substantially the abuse of narcotics in the United States.
Wow.
Because after a while, Eric and Robert, who is going to start copping these drugs when every guy you know ODs on fentanyl?
Right.
It may lead to more alcohol abuse. It may lead to more pot abuse.
Well, definitely cannabis. I mean, with the dispensaries. And by the way, it helps them out too. I would actually look for that too. Like how much Chinese investment in dispensaries and things like that are there, because it's helping that market.
The dispensary market is completely bottomed out. Everything is being run by drug gangs here in LA. Nobody goes to a dispensary any longer. They have destroyed the entire legal marijuana business in LA. You know why? Because they can undercut the costs and the drug gangs and people are doing it that way. So all their crazy progressive ideas that we're going to have a huge tax base from that is now done, my friend.
Well, you know where that's being portrayed? Still Sylvester Stallone's new TV show,
Tulsa King. It's not bad.
Oh, good.
I like that show. I like it. I mean, Stallone nails that character great. I love it. Like somebody tries to kill him when he's doing a test. He's doing a driving test, and so because he
I haven't got to that one yet. Don't spoil.
I'll only spoil this part.
Good things about this. I heard good things about this. But what I'm talking about is the fact when liquor was legal again after Prohibition, the mob didn't go away.
Right.
You know what I mean? They may have been reaching or created under Prohibition, but simply legalizing liquor again under FDR, the mob didn't go, oh, well, we're done now. Let's go back to, petty crime. They just moved into other substances and rackets. Right. The drug gangs that are running other drugs are running cheaper weed in LA. So it's one-stop shopping. I mean, there are guys who go to obviously the dispensaries, and maybe the Chinese have invested in them. But the reality of it is the tax is too high, Robert. The tax is too high.
Well, and the other problem is the feds don't recognize it in the sense of you have tax issues if you report it. You have banking issues. You have all these other problems. Even just because it's legal in the state.
I'm surprised Biden hasn't signed a presidential order, doing away with it.
That's
I don't
true.
want to give him any ideas, but I'm surprised he
Yeah.
hasn't gotten to that yet for the
Yeah,
marijuana.
and instead he just pardoned people who are already out of prison.
Right,
Oh, great.
right.
Future conflict on YouTube is worth a look. Judge for yourself. A fan or a show member,
This is a guy who runs a show called Future Conflict.
I guess. I don't know.
Dude, have a look at this obscure show that I found. Yeah, it's great. It's great to drift following your thoughts. Okay, interesting.
Thank
While on weed, apparently, and weed's direct link to schizophrenia. What about it? I mean,
Yeah.
Berenson talks about that in great detail. So do a lot of other studies.
Well,
I mean,
reefer madness, I guess.
again, let me stop and be completely definitive. You're not getting schizophrenia from smoking weed. We're talking about people who have a chance of becoming schizophrenic, who's in their DNA, who have a genetic history of it. It could put you over the top and make you full on schizophrenic.
Well, Dr. Shaham Das
the
has talked
white
about
back again.
Well, and that makes sense because I mean, what schizophrenia really is your sensory perceptions are off. So you experience as real something that's not real, but you experience it almost identically to how you would experience a real event.
Right.
And marijuana is going to impair that.
Right. There's more to it.
Nobody can also get their mind around that violence would come out of marijuana because of the Cheech and Chong mentality. Going, hey, bro, how would you chop a guy's head off with a machete? Okay, tell it to the guy's got his head chopped off with a machete. You know what I mean? By the schizophrenic on weed. You know what I mean?
Right. Because I mean, they're experiencing things that are literally, I mean, it's like a real threat. It's like
violent and hallucinatory and everything else.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying it's not your mother's weed anymore. It's not Cheech and Chong's movie anymore, bro. You know what I mean? Look at the size of the joints that Cheech and Chong are smoking. You don't need that much anymore. They, as Eric said, reefer madness had some reality to it.
Now, Dr. Shaham Das, who I've had on a couple times, is a psychiatrist out of England. He said that it can cause a psychosis, and that it has been proven. And this is what he does: is he puts people in institutions.
Only cite the statistics by the doctors in Colorado in the emergency room that's saying it's all day and night in the emergency rooms. And if you don't want to believe me, look at the doctors' statements out of the emergency rooms in Colorado. How this has exploded as a situation among young 20-year-old people in Colorado. It's off the charts.
The thing I could never get about drugs is something that controls you. That's why I was never interested. I was like, I hate things that control my brain. That drives
acid terrified me. Acid terrified me. I've never.
Oh yeah, I definitely.
The idea of acid.
I knew some people that did it, and they gave me their stories. I was like, I'm not interested in that at all. Now, ecstasy could be interesting because I knew people who took that, and it really expanded their perception of different things. And so I was like, okay, I could kind of see that. That's that guy in the Berkeley area that was one of 4 people that could legally experiment with whatever. And ecstasy was a cheap knockoff of something he was trying to use for psychological access purposes. But as a whole, it's like the idea I could get people with anxiety it benefiting them because it does quiet the brain. But that's what drove me nuts about the idea of drugs was like, well, I don't want anything to control my brain.
Well, microdosing is a big thing now, too. It's even recommended by therapists who are taking minuscule amounts of hallucinogens. I'm not in favor of it at all because it's so crazy, but it is a current phenomenon of people doing it. And then they just increase the dose. I mean, I don't know, and I've done a lot of acid. So I'm not talking like a nut. I mean, I sold acid, I made acid, I took acid. So if people have a problem with me talking about this, I'm talking from experience. Like I said in that episode, I even gave it to convicts, who were in prison. But I mean, they just, liked it and had a good time. They were going to Attica for murder. But the reality of it is that it's not black and white. It's a complicated issue. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Mark, have you heard of Molly K. McCauley, who was assassinated in Baltimore?
I have not.
Interesting.
The day before Seth Rich, I'm sure a lot of people were murdered in Baltimore the day before Seth Rich. I don't know what a space economist is. So again,
I don't know.
What is the connection other than random things here?
Let me see.
Pharma anesthesia focus. I spent 30 years in pharma anesthesia. China wants to weaken the U.S. Yeah. No, that's what I think. Yeah. I think Trump, remember he had that conversation with the Chinese about it?
Yep. I mean, and he got them to reduce their fentanyl exports. For a period of time.
That's right. So they went around the U.S. They were literally sending it here in UPS packages. all around the country. And he ended that. So they then went to the drug cartels in Mexico. And because of Biden's open border policy, that's why there's 100,000 dead Americans from fentanyl, because they could walk it in now, Robert. They could walk it in. You don't even need a mule. I mean, this is absurd. Not forget about it. But the problem of people walking in as through an open border is one thing. But the drug thing with fentanyl, it's just a joke now.
And what surprised me when I'm talking to people in China, like about Taiwan and other things, is how much the opium war still weighs on their mind. Centuries later, there's deep, deep bitterness,
and rightfully so.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, most Americans don't even know that story. Right. They have no clue that we, especially the Brits, but they forced drugs onto the Chinese population. We waged war to force them to drug their own population.
Right. And what's their penalty for a drug dealer today in China?
Say again?
Yes.
What's the penalty for a drug dealer in China today?
Absolutely, yeah.
They're like Singapore too. Singapore doesn't play at all.
Oh no.
I would say there's dozens of countries that have death penalty for drug dealers.
Oh yeah.
And absolutely. It's not because they're harsh. It's not because they're weird.
I mean, that's where Trump's proposal was. It was he was looking at what was happening in other countries.
Right. Well, I think it's like with Trump. I think it's just his opening gambit to negotiate down to life, Robert. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it was a good marketing pitch. There's not a lot of people that say, poor drug dealer, don't give him the death penalty. There's not a lot of sympathy.
Well, like you said, it's also about making news. If he said, I think drug dealers should get 20 to life, nobody would even report that.
Exactly.
Right.
He says death penalty gets a lot of coverage, classic sort of thing.
Well, ask yourself at home. I mean, all these people were opposed to the war on drugs. Is it better now? When you look out in the streets, think about that. Dude, you can't be in favor of the war on drugs. Okay. We got rid of it. Now, is it better now?
Yeah, exactly.
Just look in Portland. I mean, look at Seattle. Look at Spokane. Look at every city in America. Is it better now, bro? I mean,
well, and that's the interesting thing is like the cities that rebelled against Democrats were cities that are completely controlled by Democrats. New York, Chicago, L.A. Those are the places that rebelled the most. Is the ones that have been up and close and personal, even to some degree, D.C. Traded more Republican than other suburbs.
Did she now, the mayor of D.C., say that you can't visit any of the January 6 people unless you've been vaccinated?
Not that I know of. That would still be controlled by the U.S. Marshals because technically
that's the news item I read yesterday. I mean, I don't know if she has that power.
No, she doesn't. The U.S. Marshals completely control access.
Right.
So even if they're in a city or county jail, it's the Marshals that control access.
Right.
Now, occasionally the Marshals will play games like they did with Joe Francis, where the local facility would record calls under state law that federally that were prohibited. So they eavesdropped on all his attorney-client communications. That was part of the reason they blurbed that out we lost Hunley.
We don't need him. Just keep going.
They blurbed it out in a bail hearing. I was like, how did you have that information? And
well, don't forget Con Air. I knew a guy who was flown around in Con Air for years, Robert, on CIA planes by the prison bureau. Oh, yeah. You know what I'm talking about. That
was a great movie. That was a great movie, Con Air, too.
Yeah. I had some friends in that one. But the idea that you don't know, your family doesn't even know where you are and you're flying around the country from prison to prison. I mean, they would put them in local jails. They would land for a while and take off again. I mean, wow. Yeah. I mean, that's our gulag. That's our gulag.
Well, if they want to treat you brutally, they put you on the long bus ride. So
the long bus ride or the planes. They also have those planes, and that's to get you to talk.
Yeah, and it's just brutal treatment. I mean, you're up and down, you're locked in. It's intended. They did that to that cult guy. Remember that cult guy up in Washington? What do they call that guy? He had his own property and land and
the Rajneesh.
Yeah, I think so. They made a documentary about.
Yeah.
That's what they did to him. They stuck him on a long bus ride, and he pled by the end of that bus ride.
You know what? You're right. I forgot about that. Well, those guys were crazy. They wore the orange robes. I remember seeing them eating in the Tinker Street Cafe when I lived in Woodstock because they had a contingent even back east in Woodstock, New York. When I lived up there and they'd just be eating in their robes. It was a sex cult too, Robert.
Yep.
And
you always got to have that angle, right? It's no
I think
fun
it was run by Sheila. He had they always have a woman's sidekick.
Completely. It's all. I mean, it's like the Nixium thing. I mean, you got to have some women be the disciplinarians.
There's a new one on Netflix I was told to watch called Orgasm Inc.
I haven't heard of that
It's
one.
a cult. Yeah. It's some kind of yoga orgasm cult gone wild. So that's on my weekend.
That was the advice I got in Malibu.
There he is.
There you go. Well, from the most common advice I got in Malibu was, if you get married, don't let your wife have a male yoga coach. That was the
You know what? That
number one.
still holds to this day. That's
Yeah.
still very true. I mean, or if you're Kanye West or a celebrity, don't have an intelligence operative from Canada as your fitness instructor.
Or have NBA players around to bang your wife.
Yeah, that's not good either.
Well, considering, okay, what did his wife do before he married her? I mean, how did she get on the map? How did she get famous? It cannot come as a complete surprise.
I like that Obama used these black surrogates to go to strange places, like Dennis Rodman, all of a sudden with the basketball team in North Korea, with Vice, which has been shown to be a deep state operation, and Jay-Z going down to be with the Castro brothers down in Havana to talk about baseball in Cuba. He blatantly created these miniature Obamas to go around the world as deep state operatives. Obama. I mean, think about
on group therapy. Like I went with an ex once, and I was like, if I was an addict, no way I'd go to any of these things, especially if I was anybody prominent. Because I mean, they're sitting there telling stories, and it's like, okay, that's a blackmail story. That's a blackmail story.
Oh, no. There was a great joke by Richard Lewis. He was on the road a lot. And he had to leave his group therapy, and one of the girls used to cry a lot. So he was on the road, and they put a phone on the table with him on the other end of the phone. And he said, "Debbie, can you lean closer to the phone? I can't hear you sobbing."
Oh, man.
But yeah, I mean, it's wide open. It's wide open in group therapy. Yeah. I mean, in theory, there was a guy who killed a Indian doctor and his family in Westchester County, went into a 12-step meeting in New York and said, "I think I killed a whole family in a blackout." And there was some sort of moral dilemma as to whether they should rat this guy out. And somebody did, and he was indicted, and he did kill the whole family. Wow. You know, and that's how they got him. That's how they got him. And he pled that, you know, there was some expectation of anonymity in this 12-step meeting. And the judges said, no, you killed a whole family. You're going to jail.
That's a hard one to call. It's kind of like, yeah, you know, like you can confess to your priest sometimes.
Oh, now, okay. Now, when you hire a therapist one-on-one in the United States, you have to sign this entire document saying they have to turn their stuff over to the FBI if the FBI, you know about this, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's like
insane. It's absolutely insane.
Also, a bunch of states pass laws that, like, I had clients in California, for example.
Yeah.
And I was like, you can't talk about a bunch of stuff to the shrink. The shrink is now
that's right. That's also
required to report a bunch of stuff. And I was like, this is not going to. I get why they're doing it. They want people who confess to crimes to the shrink to be able to shrink to rat them out.
Yep.
The problem with that is if it's people that need therapy and it's a, you know, an addiction issue or another issue that led to the criminal behavior, they can't get the effective therapy based on these rules.
Or they're on the cusp of going that way, and now they get ratted out, so you don't get the therapy, and they go do the crime because they don't get.
Correct. It's not working the way they thought it would work.
Yeah, I mean, I read that thing and I went like, whoa, this is really giving me pause here to do this, you know, and if you're desperate enough, you sign it. But man, oh man, you got to read the writing of this stuff for the FBI and she said, the therapist me said, "I'm sorry, there's nothing I could do about it. You know, I'm under the gun." You know, I didn't blame her. You know, she said, "This is to get my license, Robert."
Yeah.
It's all about licensure, Robert.
It always is.
Yep.
Oh, perfect theme. Last few super chats, and then I've got to do last call, and everybody can.
All right, that's all right. I got to go to the bathroom anyway, and Robert's got to free some prisoners somewhere. So,
what's the real story about the seemingly random killing of Georgetown socialite Mary Meyer along the C&O Canal in 1964? As a precursor to Marilyn Monroe death?
No. I think she was killed by this black drifter, and he tried to rape her, and he got off. They brought in a black woman attorney, and she played like a kind of a race card to get him off. And I think he killed her. She was also happened to be the wife of a CIA operative, and she was also the brother-in-law to the publisher of the Washington Post. And when the two of them showed up, they were going through her safe and trying to find her diary. And she did have an affair with JFK. But I believe she was legitimately murdered by a black drifter when she was jogging.
Yeah, it's kind of like Marilyn Monroe. I think Marilyn Monroe legitimately died from a drug overdose.
Absolutely.
There were a lot of people trying to cover stuff up.
And a lot of them showed up, as we showed in the episode, running into each other to take their wiretaps out at the end. Hey, Bob, how's it going?
Oh, you're here? No, you're here?
Yeah,
what are you doing?
No, it was all different agencies, but I think she legitimately OD'd, and I think Mary Cord Meyer was legitimately murdered. Her father. Yes, we know that. Yeah, there's not a lot of intrigue about it. We know that her husband, Cord Meyer, was CIA, and we also know who her brother-in-law was.
Another part of your Liddy discussion, I actually brought up the possibility of, not Felt specifically, but more generally, to Ben Bradley before it was ever publicly disclosed, back when Bradley was still at the Washington Post, because it was the Yale Political Union, so you could get access to all these specialized meetings.
Right. Bradley ran into Engleton in her apartment after her death. Yeah.
Well, and I asked Bradley, I was like, maybe the reason you guys are not disclosing Deep Throat isn't because you want to protect the anonymity of the source, but because the source would impugn the integrity of the investigation, that it would suggest you were operating on behalf of corrupt government actors, not really exposing. And he just smirked and then didn't answer.
Yeah,
of course,
it's a good answer.
That's exactly who it was.
A good non-answer, though, Robert, because the reality of it is a lot of people knew that Mark Felt was Deep Throat. A lot of people. Yes. And the only schmuck who didn't was the head of the FBI, apparently, who just couldn't believe it. L. Patrick Gray.
They should have made Liddy head of the FBI. That would have been fun.
Well, you know what? That's why he left. That's why he went to work for his father, because he saw the clog of the pipeline to get to the top was not normal. It was not normal. As was with
I see that. Is that like a chicken?
Oh yeah, it's a chicken. It looks like support for a channel. Future conflict does not constitute. We never said it did. We're just saying.
Oh yeah, no.
Hey, we've never heard of all these, and we're joking.
This is just they just want to piggyback.
In fact, if you like a channel, you should send a super chat in right now, or maybe you don't really like
send
it. Send it in.
The bigger the super chat, the more we'll promote your channel.
Absolutely.
Let me be as blunt as humanly possible.
Yep.
We are whores here, folks. Yes. What did that say, Eric? I don't know.
Locking those January 6 people up as punishment. That's all it really is intended to do.
It's intended
to send a public message.
I have gone on the record saying this is worse than the internment of the Japanese, and I'm not buckling on that, even though this was just
for these individuals, absolutely. I mean,
no, not just for these individuals. I'm talking American history. They had softball teams at those goddamn internment camps, Robert. They had softball teams.
No doubt. I mean, the perilous precedent set with the Japanese detainment was the legal precedent, that it could even be done. You could strip someone of every single right.
No doubt about it. But I'm saying they were not
locked in terms of treatment. Cells. January 6th is much worse. Yeah.
Right. Okay. I just wanted to.
I don't know if I'm trying to think of some other. You'd have to go back into the 40s and 50s to find comparable treatment. You know what I mean? I mean, like state places where they really, used to beat people up and whatever, but on a systemic level. But I can't remember. Like early civil rights.
Nixon locking everyone into RFK Stadium that he picked up in the anti-war demonstration. Mass incarceration is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay, that was mass incarceration inside the stadium, mass arrest without any probable cause, right?
Yep. And the Palmer raids, back to the early
and there's also the Democratic convention where the whole world is watching, beating them and stuff like that. But this is over a prolonged period of time with no rights, no anything going on here.
And with the Chicago 7, as I recall, they all had bail.
They were out raising money every night.
They were
in fact, the insanity was they had to scamper out of the courtroom to get to jet planes, commercial planes, to fly to a college to raise money.
Yeah,
for their own defense. It
is funny. Well, you know what? To make everybody feel better, Barnes would feel bad if
Oswald the Patsy.
Didn't come in.
There
Oswald the Patsy. Yes.
Good for all families. And
Patsy.
On that note, Mark just sent me a picture earlier that his Hanukkah tree is kind of sparse. We now have Christmas ornaments, as well as Viva and Barnes, by the way.
I saw you guys.
Great Ziggy
stuff. That was cool.
There's a link in the show description for the ornaments. If anybody wants to go get them, there's ornaments for me, Unstructured, for America's Untold. Viva and Barnes have it. There's Hush Hush. All of that.
Very, very reasonably priced too.
Yes. Yeah. So it's a big thing to have for Christmas. It's a community member of both communities who's
There's a
doing
dreidel
it for us.
too, according to Viva.
Yes, there's a dreidel ornament. So she did do
Yep.
the Hanukkah bit as well.
Oh,
So
I was wondering what that was. I was like, dreidel, what is that? It kind of looks like a spanking thing or something. Well, what is a dreidel?
No, it's a little. It's a
I
top.
ordered
top.
one.
It's a top. It's a spinning top.
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
You put candy in it, and you sing the dreidel song that
What's the
Viva
dreidel
was
song?
referring to before he went to Canada to celebrate Christmas, like the phony goy that he is.
When
And
does
if he was
Hanukkah
here, I
start?
tell it to his face, but he doesn't have the courage to show up on this show right before Hanukkah.
Well, I once made the mistake of when I was at Yale. One of my roommates was Jewish,
Right.
and there was like another holiday. I was like, man, you got a lot of holidays if you're Jewish. And he just went on a long rant about the long bad treatment of Jewish people. I was like, I didn't mean to be. It was just a little joke, not a big joke. I was
Right.
like, I said I want to be Jewish because I get more holidays at Yale. But well, how long? So when does Hanukkah start officially?
This is pretty late this year. It's like the 17th, and it goes for 8 consecutive nights. It's which if Viva knew this, he could get a gift every night and make out better than Christmas, which is one day of presents. With Hanukkah, it's every day you get another present.
Well, it's like the Adam Sandler song, why Hanukkah is so much better.
Right, but it's true. It is true.
Why? What does he call it? Why it's great to be Jewish or something? It's like he goes through the whole
Yeah,
heroes,
yeah.
Hanukkah, the whole 9 yards.
There was supposed to be a film about the Maccabee brothers, a historic, massive epic on the Maccabees, how they fought the Syrians and defeated them, which was the miracle of Hanukkah and the Festival of Lights. They had a oil that burned for 8 consecutive nights, and they fought the Syrian army and defeated them, which is, I don't know if it's true or not, but they were going to make a film about it. And the star of the film, who was producing this and directing it, was Mel Gibson. That was put on hold. Recently, that was 15 years ago. And now I've heard from another A-list star that it's back in development again. May or may not be with Mel Gibson. I'm not sure.
Interesting. How many people in Israel are really like follow the holidays versus don't these days?
I think it's probably the same reflection as New York Jews. You know what I mean? Like,
was it like a third really follow?
Yeah, it's probably a third. I mean, they have Lubavitches there, Hasidim there that everybody hates, just like regular Jews. You know what I mean? So, but live and let live. As far as I mean, the more the merrier. I mean.
Are you supposed to not work, or can you work through that?
Oh, no. It's a festival. It's a very festive holiday.
I guess
look, I mean, if you look at Christmas, it's kind of like they saw that we had a good thing going and they said, let's copy that. It was a pretty good idea,
Well, we have the tree, the
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of similarities.
The pagan fertility god and
the gifts and everything. And, the dreidel is like I said, it's a top you put in these chocolate candies and very family driven holiday for the children.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And they get a gift. You get a gift every day for 8 days.
Every single day.
That is a sweet
bicycle. Gig. You can get a bicycle. You can get a trip to Las Vegas. You can get a pinball machine.
What was your favorite Hanukkah gift you ever got?
I didn't get any. My family was really cheap. They said they liked me as a friend. I didn't really understand that, but I didn't really get that. But my friends did. So I live vicariously through my friends. Yeah. You like that, Hunley, don't you? You get Hunley to laugh every once in a while. It's heard me talk to him for a year.
Hunley's got comparable. He got stories. It was like, what was it your family used to eat? It was something like, you tell the stories like something.
Rabbit.
Rabbit.
Yeah. When I was growing up, I mean,
he lived off of squirrel and rabbit.
Yeah, it was like the way you described it. It sounded like he was out, in the desert, no food, no nothing. We just tried to find some rabbits to survive.
I told you in the Liddy story how he eats the rat. He cooks it and he eats the hindquarters of the rat to get over his fear of rats. I mean, that's really odd.
Mine was literally as my dad put all of the money he had into building our house, the property, or whatever, and didn't have money to go buy hamburger. So out in the backyard, 22 round is not that expensive. Not back then.
That's what Liddy did. Liddy, even though his family had money, which I didn't know about, his family had a lot of money. And his father was huge as an attorney, Robert. I mean, a huge patent attorney in New York, but also had offices in D.C. And then was even knighted by the King of Sweden, Liddy's father. And now his son, somebody told me, is embroiled in the Kerry Lake debacle in Arizona.
Yeah, apparently.
Thomas P. Liddy is involved with the deep state Mecanians, if that's a word, in Arizona to combat Lake's move.
So does rabbit taste like chicken?
Closer to rattlesnake.
Oh, wow.
I've never eaten rattlesnake either.
I've eaten
a little bit chewy than I've heard.
You guys have alligator?
Alligator is kind of close. Okay, it's rattlesnake's not as tough as alligator, but it's along that line. So if you've had alligator, rattlesnake is similar, but it's a little bit more tender, and I'd say rabbit's even a little more tender than that. But it's more in that line, so there's slight gaminess in there.
Reminds me of a gift I got for people for Christmas that didn't go over well. I ordered some reindeer.
Oh, that could turn people off.
Yeah, I thought, it's
the
Christmas
one you
reindeer.
sent with the red nose. That was sick, Robert. I mean, you shouldn't have done that. If you want to see an episode, look at the Sonora House episode that Eric and I did where I killed a deer and had to gut it and chop its head off and then eat it all winter with my communal friends to survive in the Sonora House episode. I had no idea what I was doing. I killed a deer, and then I called up all my redneck friends and said, what do I do now? So they told me how to gut it and what to do with it and skin it. And I was reluctantly doing it, but I did do it. So I'm proud of myself.
Venison tastes good. The best.
It was good. It was good. We made meatballs out of it, steaks, everything for the whole winter. We survived on it.
Best meat I ever had was bear in Russia. Really sweet.
Ooh, interesting.
But right up there with Kobe steak I got in Japan. You can get steak that's ranked.
What about bison? What about bison burgers? Do you like that?
Bison's good. It's like
you need something in it. You've got to have like lamb or ground veal or even ground pork because the bison's just too lean. It's too lean.
I do like venison. It's good.
Yeah.
I mean, I would put venison above bison for sure.
Right. And, next week when we do the show, Cooking with Robert and Eric, I'd like to address some of these lean meat ideas that you men are professing today, because it is a problem for many of the women at home. And for the holidays coming up, I think in the next episode, we should address lean meats, fun or foul.
I agree. And until next time, we'll see everybody whenever we hit again.